Hello guys, welcome to Soul Fiction. So in this video, we will see, what if Naruto gained the true eyes of omniscience? If you enjoy these kinds of stories, don't forget to show us some love by hitting the like button and subscribing to the channel. Your support means the world to us. Now, let's start the story. Chapter 1. Awakening. The ancient stone felt warm beneath Naruto Uzumaki's fingertips despite the cool air surrounding the ruins. Sunset painted the crumbling structures in amber and gold, casting long shadows across symbols etched in two walls that had stood for thousands of years. The solo mission to investigate unusual chakra readings near the Land of Iron's northern border had seemed straightforward enough, but something about his place made the hair on the back of his neck stand up. This definitely wasn't in the mission briefing, he muttered, brushing dust from a spiral pattern that seemed oddly familiar. 6 years after the Fourth Great Ninja War, Naruto had grown taller, more measured in his movements. The black and orange jacket he wore bore the red spiral of the Uzumaki clan, and at 22, his face had lost its boyish roundness, replaced by a sharper jawline and more thoughtful blue eyes. The ruins formed a perfect circle in a clearing surrounded by ancient pines. At the center stood what appeared to be an altar, its surface covered in script too weathered to read clearly. Naruto crouched, running his hand along the edge of the stone. His mission was simple reconnaissance: locate the chakra disturbance, document it, and report back to Konoha. Nothing had suggested anything like this. I should probably wait for backup, he said to himself, even as curiosity pulled him toward the altar. The late CXTH Hokage Kakashi would have advised caution. Naruto could almost hear his former sensei's voice. Sometimes the most dangerous traps are the ones that don't look like traps at all. But Naruto had never been one for caution when discovery beckoned. As the last rays of sunlight struck the altar, something glinted beneath centuries of dust. Naruto brushed away the grime, revealing an inlaid crystal that caught the light and fractured it into thousands of rainbow prisms. Within the crystal, something shifted, like liquid silver swirling in endless patterns. "What is this place?" he whispered. The answer came not in words but in a sudden pulse of energy that rippled through the clearing. The ground trembled. Symbols carved into the surrounding stones began to glow with pale blue light, illuminating the clearing as darkness fell. Naruto stepped back, instantly alert. He formed a shadow clone with a quick hand sign, sending it to higher ground to assess the situation while he maintained position. Years of experience had taught him to prepare for combat while investigating, a lesson learned through too many ambushes. His clone's voice called down from atop a broken column. "Boss, these markings, they're forming a pattern. It looks like..." The clone never finished. A beam of light shot from the crystal, dissolving the shadow clone instantly. Naruto leapt backward, fingers already forming the signs for another clone technique. When the light changed direction, and struck him directly in the center of his forehead, there was no pain, only a sensation of falling backward into endless space. Colors and sounds rushed past him, voices speaking languages he'd never heard yet somehow understood, visions of places he'd never visited yet recognized intimately. His consciousness expanded outward in all directions simultaneously, touching minds across vast distances, witnessing events unfolding across the world in real time. Too much. It's too much. Naruto fell to his knees, hands pressed against his temples. The information flooded his mind without filter or context. Births and deaths, conversations and battles, secrets whispered in shadows and proclamations shouted from rooftops. Past, present, and countless possible futures tangled together in his perception. "Make it stop," he gasped, but the knowledge continued pouring in, filling every corner of his consciousness until his mind would shatter from the pressure. Through the chaos, a single memory surfaced. Not his own, but ancient and alien. A figure standing before the same altar, eyes blazing with silver light, speaking words that echoed across millennia. "The eyes see all, know all. The burden is great, but necessary. The blind world needs those who can truly see." The memory faded, replaced by a sharp, searing pain behind his eyes. Naruto cried out, falling forward onto the cool stone as consciousness slipped away. His last thought before darkness claimed him was of a face, pale eyes filled with concern, midnight hair framing delicate features. "Hinata." Naruto awoke to the sound of water dripping somewhere nearby. He lay still, taking inventory of his body before opening his eyes. Nothing seemed injured, but something felt profoundly different, as though his skin no longer fit quite right. When he finally opened his eyes, the world had changed. The ruins surrounded him as before, but now overlaid ghostly images, chakra networks flowing through stones, the paths of insects beneath the earth, air currents carrying particles of dust that glowed like tiny stars. He could see everything, all at once, from every angle. What happened to me? His own voice sounded strange in his ears, carrying undertones and harmonics he'd never noticed before. He stood carefully, testing his balance. The mauve element sent fresh waves of information cascading through his mind. The precise calculation of muscle tension required, the minute adjustments to maintain equilibrium, the exact displacement of air around his body. Naruto pressed his palms against his eyes, trying to block out the overwhelming sensory input. When he pulled his hands away, he caught his reflection in a puddle of rainwater collected on the altar stone. His breath caught in his throat. His eyes had changed. Where once they had been clear blue, now they shimmered with swirling silver light, like quicksilver pools containing galaxies of stars. The whisker marks on his cheeks seemed more pronounced, and faint luminescent patterns traced his skin like circuits. The eyes of Omniscience, he whispered, the name coming to him unbidden. Knowledge he couldn't possibly have known yet somehow did. With that name came understanding. These eyes were not a dojutsu like the Sharingan or Byakugan, but something far older and more fundamental. They didn't enhance his vision. They transformed his entire perception of reality. Every moment, every action, every possible consequence played out before him in intricate, branching paths of causality. Naruto took a step and nearly fell as his mind showed him simultaneously every possible outcome of that single movement. He steadied himself against a stone column, forcing himself to breathe slowly. Focus, he told himself. One thing at a time. But focusing proved nearly impossible when everything demanded attention at once. He could sense a storm front moving in from the north, calcula. The exact second rain would begin falling, feel the vibrations of a rabbit's heartbeat 300 meters away, and perceive the slow deterioration of the stone beneath his fingers, all simultaneously and with perfect clarity. And beyond the physical realm, knowledge continued flooding in, historical events he'd never studied, languages he'd never learned, techniques he'd never seen. He knew the exact position of every person in Konoha at this moment, could recite the complete text of scrolls locked in hidden vaults, understood jutsu that had been lost for centuries. Most disorienting were the flashes of future events, potential futures, he realized, branching out in countless variations. In one, he saw Konoha burning. In another, a figure with a mirror reflected light that cut through dimensions. In yet another, he stood before a being of pure energy that called itself the Divine Arbiter. I need to get back to the village, Naruto decided, forcing himself to focus on that single goal. He took a step, then another, each movement becoming slightly easier as he learned to filter the constant influx of information. By the time he reached the edge of the ruins, he could walk without stumbling. Though each step still triggered cascades of potential outcomes that he had to consciously ignore. The forest path stretched before him, and Naruto knew, simply knew, that traveling at his normal pace would bring him to a crossroads just as a group of mercenaries passed through. Without conscious thought, he adjusted his route and timing to avoid the encounter entirely. This newfound awareness was simultaneously empowering and terrifying. He could see the optimal path through any situation, but the sheer volume of knowledge threatened to drown his own thoughts and instincts. As he moved through the forest, Naruto gradually began developing mental techniques to manage the influx. He imagined compartments where he could store information until needed, focusing only on what was immediately relevant. It helped, though the effort left him sweating and exhausted. Night had fully descended, but darkness meant nothing to his new vision. He could see heat signatures of creatures sleeping in their burrows, trace the movement of nocturnal predators hunting through undergrowth, even perceive the slow expansion of tree roots beneath the soil. When the rain finally began, precisely when he'd known it would, Naruto took shelter in a cave he'd never visited but somehow knew existed just beyond the next ridge. Inside, he found traces of an old campfire, exactly where his mind had shown him it would be. This is not normal, he murmured, gathering dry wood from the spot his omniscient perception indicated would be protected from moisture. As he struck flint to steel, a method he'd ever learned but now knew intimately, Naruto caught another glimpse of potential futures. In most, he returned to Konoha, but the variations of what happened after diverged wildly. In some, he was celebrated. In others, feared. In a disturbing number, he saw himself isolated, cut off from human connection by the very power that made him special. The fire caught, casting warm light around the cave. Naruto stared into the flames, trying to quiet his mind enough to rest. Sleep seemed impossible with knowledge constantly flowing through his consciousness, but he needed to recover before continuing. He closed his eyes, focusing on his breathing as Sakura had once taught him during chakra control exercises. In and out, slow and steady. Gradually, the torrent of information receded to a manageable stream. Just as he began to drift toward sleep, a sharp premonition jolted him fully awake. Danger approached. Not immediately, but soon. His mind calculated trajectories, identities, intentions. 5. Individuals moving with purpose through the forest, tracking signs of his passage. Not Konoha ninja, but something else. Professionals. Hunters. And they were looking specifically for the bearer of the eyes. Naruto frowned. How could they possibly know? The transformation had happened only hours ago. Yet somehow, they were already on his trail, equipped with specialized tools for tracking unusual chakra signatures. He stood, extinguishing the fire with a quick water jutsu he'd never formally learned but now executed flawlessly. His mind presented multiple escape routes, calculating success probabilities for each. But something deeper than the analytical power of the eyes made him hesitate. Running meant leading these hunters back toward Konoha eventually. Better to confront them here, away from innocent bystanders, where he could test the combat applications of his new abilities. Naruto moved to the mouth of the cave, staring out at the rain-soaked forest. His vision penetrated the darkness and distance effortlessly, showing him the hunters' positions. 4 men and 1 woman, all wearing the same uniform, black combat gear with a symbol he didn't recognize emblazoned on their shoulders. A circle bisected by a vertical line. The Void Collective. The name materialized in his mind along with fragmented knowledge about the organization. Seekers of power, collectors of rare abilities. Servants of something they called the final truth. Naruto stepped out into the rain, knowing exactly where to place each foot to move silently through the underbrush. The Omniscience showed him just the hunters' current positions but their planned movements, allowing him to circle behind them unseen. He paused on a branch above the group's apparent leader, a tall woman with a sensor device that pulsed with soft blue light. Her companions formed a protective formation around her, eyes constantly scanning the surroundings. The signal is stronger here, the woman said, adjusting something on her device. The awakening definitely occurred. Omniscience walks the world again. After all these centuries, one of the men replied, his voice reverent. The master will be pleased. If we capture the vessel, another countered. Remember what happened last time. Naruto processed this exchange, the eyes automatically connecting it to historical records he couldn't possibly have studied. ECORDS describing previous appearances of the eyes of omniscience throughout history, always ending in disaster when the power was misused or fell into the wrong hands. He'd heard enough. These people weren't just tracking him. They intended to capture him, to use his power for whatever this master had planned. The knowledge of their intentions came not from their words but from the eyes themselves, showing him their past actions and future plans with perfect clarity. Naruto dropped from the branch, landing in the center of their formation with cat-like grace. All 5 hunters pivoted toward him immediately, weapons drawn. But he could see their movements before they made them, telegraphed not just by muscle tension but by the branching pathways of potential actions illuminated by the eyes. I think you're looking for me, he said calmly, noting how his voice carried new authority. I'd like to know why. The leader recovered first from her surprise, her expression shifting from shock to calculation. The vessel awakens, she said, lowering her weapon slightly. We serve the void. We've come to guide you. Naruto could see the life forming before she spoke. It could trace the neural pathways in her brain activating. could see the subtle micro-expressions that betrayed deception. More disturbingly, he could see her true intention, to use a specialized sealing technique that would incapacitate him without damaging the eyes. I don't need guides, Naruto replied, maintaining a relaxed posture while simultaneously mapping every possible attack vector. Especially ones who lie. The atmosphere tensed. The leader's eyes narrowed. You don't understand the power you carry, boy. It isn't meant for one person. It belongs to the collective. Strange, Naruto said, I don't remember asking for it. But now that I have it, I'll decide what to do with it. He saw the attack before any of them moved, a coordinated assault designed to surround and overwhelm. Two would engage directly, while the others prepared the sealing technique. Simple, predictable, almost disappointing given his new capabilities. When they finally moved, Naruto was already countering. He sidestepped the first attacker's kunai with millimeters to spare, allowing the blade to pass harmlessly while he delivered a precisely calibrated strike to the man's solar plexus, just enough force to incapacitate without causing permanent damage. The second attacker launched a fire jutsu, but Naruto had already calculated its path and moved to the exact position where the flames wouldn't reach. His response came instinctively, a Rasengan formed in his palm. But different from any he'd created before. This one contained not just swirling chakra but what appeared to be condensed knowledge itself, glimmering with silver light. He struck the ground between the remaining hunters, not aiming to injure but to disrupt the formation they needed for their sealing technique. The Rasengan detonated with controlled force, nding all four remaining assailants tumbling backward. I don't want to hurt you, Naruto called out, standing calmly in the crater his attack had created. But I will if I have to. The leader pushed herself to her feet, blood trickling from a cut on her forehead. You have no idea what's coming, she snarled. The eyes have returned to the world. The balance will respond. The arbiter will come. Another fragment of knowledge clicked into place in Naruto's mind. The divine arbiter, an entity or force that had destroyed previous bearers of the eyes throughout history. Something that believed omniscience belonged only to the divine, not to mortals. Before he could question her further, the leader made a hand sign Naruto had never seen before. All four conscious hunters vanished in plumes of dark smoke, leaving only their unconscious comrade behind. Naruto approached the fallen hunter cautiously, though the eyes assured him the man posed no threat. A quick search revealed little, standard ninja tools. The strange sensor device now broken, and a medallion bearing the Void Collective's symbol. He pocketed the medallion, then used a basic medical jutsu to ensure the hunter wouldn't die from his injuries before help arrived. Killing an unconscious opponent wasn't his style, no matter what organization they served. With the immediate threat neutralized, Naruto resumed his journey toward Konoha. Moving faster now that he'd had some experience using the eyes in combat. The rain had stopped, leaving the forest dripping and fresh-scented. Dawn was approaching, though still hours away. As he traveled, Naruto's thoughts turned to what awaited him in the village. The eyes showed him countless possible receptions, some welcoming, others fearful. The variables were too numerous to predict with certainty, and that itself was strangely comforting. Even omniscience had limits when it came to free will and human emotion. One face appeared consistently across potential futures, Hinata Hyuga. In nearly every scenario, she was there, her reaction varying from odd concern to steadfast support. Something about her presence anchored the shifting possibilities, providing consistency amid chaos. Naruto increased his pace, driven by a sudden urgency to reach the village, to reach her. The eyes might show him everything there was to know, but they couldn't tell him how it would feel to someone look at him with understanding rather than fear or greed. Dawn broke over Konoha, painting the Hokage monument in soft golden light. The village was just beginning to stir, shopkeepers opening their doors. Ninja reporting for missions, children making their way to the academy. Normal, peaceful, unaware that anything had changed. Naruto stood atop a telephone pole at the village outskirts, observing it all with new eyes. From this vantage point, he could see not just the physical layout but the invisible networks that connected everything, chakra flowing through people and buildings, emotional bonds linking individuals. Causal relationships between seemingly unrelated events. It was beautiful and terrifying. He could see which academy student would one day become Hokage if current trajectories held. Could identify exactly which civilian harbored secret resentment toward ninja authority. Could pinpoint the precise location where a water main would break in approximately 4 days if not reinforced. He took a deep breath, applying the mental filtering techniques he'd been developing during his journey. Focus on the immediate, store the rest for later. With concentration, the overwhelming influx of information receded to manageable levels. Naruto dropped from the pole to the street below, drawing curious glances from early rising villagers. He realized belatedly that he must look different, his transformed eyes. The faint luminous patterns on his skin, the subtle aura of power that even civilians could sense. A child stopped to stare openly, pointing at Naruto's eyes. "Mama, look, that ninja has stars in his eyes." The mother pulled her child along with an apologetic smile toward Naruto. "Don't point, Kenji. I'm sorry, sir. It's fine," Naruto assured her, surprise. At how normal his voice sounded despite the turmoil inside him. "I'd stare too." As he made his way through the village streets, Naruto felt increasingly self-conscious. The eyes revealed everyone's reactions in excruciating detail. The microsecond of fear when they noticed his appearance, the curiosity that followed, the respectful distance most maintained. He knew their thoughts before they formed words. Saw the questions they were too polite to ask. He needed to report to the Hokage, Kakashi's successor, Konohamaru, still new to the position but growing into it with each passing month. But first, there was someone else he needed to see. Naruto changed direction, heading toward the Hyuga compound. As he approached, his omniscient perception revealed Hinata in the garden, practicing her gentle fist forms with characteristic grace and precision. She wore training clothes, her long indigo hair tied back in a practical ponytail, completely unaware of his return or transformation. He paused at the compound entrance. Suddenly uncertain, the eyes showed him dozens of ways this conversation might unfold, but none of them felt real until experienced. Knowledge wasn't the same as living. The guard recognized him immediately. "Naruto-san, you've returned. Should I announce you to the family?" "Just Hinata, if she's available," Naruto replied. The guard's eyes widened slightly at Naruto's transformed appearance. But he nodded professionally. "Of course. Please wait here." Moments later, Hinata appeared at the gate, slightly breathless from interrupted training. Her pale eyes widened as she took in Naruto's appearance, one hand rising to cover her mouth in surprise. "Naruto-kun, what happened to you?" Her voice held concern without fear, and something in Naruto relaxed at the sound. "It's complicated," he said, offering a smile that felt strange on his face after hours of tension. "Can we talk somewhere private?" Hinata nodded immediately, stepping out to join him. The riverbank, their special place, where they had shared so many important moments over the years. Naruto nodded, grateful for her understanding without explanation. They walked in silence through the village, Hinata occasionally glancing at him with obvious concern but asking no questions until they reached the secluded spot along the river where a large oak provided shade and privacy. "You're different," she said finally as they sat side by side on the grassy bank. It wasn't just his eyes she referred to, but something deeper, a fundamental shift in his presence, his energy. "I found something on my mission," Naruto began, struggling to articulate an experience that defied ordinary description. "Or maybe it found me. These eyes, they're called the eyes of omniscience. They let me see everything." Hinata's brow furrowed. "Everything. Past, present, possible futures. Things happening on the other side of the world. Information I never learned but somehow know." He gestured helplessly. "It's overwhelming. I can see the chakra flowing through your body right now. I know what you had for breakfast. I can see 17 different ways this conversation might end." To his surprise, Hinata reached out and took his hand. Her touch anchored him, providing focus amid the constant flood of information. "Can you turn it off?" she asked practically. Naruto shook his head. "I'm learning to filter it. To focus only on what's important in the moment. But it's always there. Like having 1,000 shadow clones all feeding you information simultaneously." "Is it painful?" "Not physically. But it's lonely." The admission surprised even him. "I see so much, but it separates me from everything. People's reactions, their thoughts, their secrets. I know it all before they say a word." Hinata squeezed his hand gently. "But you can't know everything. Naruto-kun. Not really. You can see facts, events, possibilities, but understanding comes from experience, not just knowledge. Her insight struck him deeply. She was right. The eyes showed him information but not wisdom. They revealed what people might do but not why they made those choices. They gave him facts without context, knowledge without understanding. There's more, he said, turning to face her fully. There are people hunting me now. An organization called the Void Collective. They want the eyes for themselves. And there's something else. Something called the Divine Arbiter that apparently destroys anyone who carries this power. Hinata's expression remained calm, though Naruto could see her pulse quicken with concern. Then we'll face it together. She said simply. You're not alone, Naruto-kun. You never have been. Her words pierced through the isolation he'd felt since acquiring the eyes. Here was something the Omniscience couldn't give him. Unconditional acceptance, offered freely without calculation or agenda. I should go to Konohamaru, Naruto said after a moment. Report what happened. Hinata nodded, rising gracefully. I'll come with you, if you want. I'd like that. He stood, still holding her hand. Hinata, thank you, for not looking at me differently. She smiled, a slight blush coloring her cheeks. Your eyes may have changed, Naruto-kun, but I still see you. As they walked toward the Hokage Tower, Naruto felt the burden of omniscience lighten slightly. The eyes showed him everything there was to know. But Hinata reminded him of what truly mattered: connection, understanding, the precious bonds that gave knowledge its purpose. Konohamaru Sarutobi, 7th Hokage of Konoha, Santa, read at Naruto from behind the massive desk that had once belonged to his grandfather. At 21, he was the youngest Hokage in village history, his appointment a testament to both his abilities and the peaceful era that allowed for such youth in leadership. Let me get this straight, he said, leaning forward with fingers steepled. You found ancient ruins, got zapped by some crystal, and now you can see everything. That's a simplified version, but yes, Naruto replied. He stood before the desk with Hinata slightly behind him, both maintaining formal posture despite the friendship between them. Konohamaru rubbed his temples. And now there's a secret organization hunting you for these eyes, plus some divine entity that might show up to smite you for having them. Also correct. Troublesome, Konohamaru muttered, unconsciously echoing Shikamaru's favorite expression. We need to assemble a team to investigate these ruins immediately. And we need to keep your condition classified for now. Naruto nodded, though the eyes already showed him how futile that would be. News of his transformation would spread through the village by nightfall, reaching neighboring countries within days. The eyes of omniscience were too significant, too visible to keep secret. There's something else you should know, Naruto added. These eyes, they're showing me potential threats to the village. Threats we wouldn't normally detect until too late. Konohamaru straightened, instantly alert. What kind of threats? Various possibilities. Most won't happen, but some have high probability. Naruto closed his eyes briefly, accessing the stored information. The most immediate concern is a planned assassination attempt against the Lightning Daimyo during his visit next month. If successful, it would destabilize the alliance between our nations. How certain are you about this? 87% probability based on current trajectories. Konohamaru exchanged glances with Hinata, clearly unsettled by Naruto's precise prediction. That's specific. Do you know who's behind it? Not yet. The eyes show me events more clearly than motivations. Naruto hesitated. There's also a more personal threat. The Void Collective will send more hunters, better prepared next time. They'll target people close to me to draw me out. Hinata stepped forward. We should prepare defenses, increase security around the village. Agreed, Konohamaru said. Naruto, I want you to work with Shikamaru to document everything you know about these threats. Hinata, assemble a protection detail, people you trust absolutely. Both nodded their acceptance of these assignments. In the meantime, the young Hokage continued, we need to understand these eyes better. Are they permanent? Can they be removed or transferred? What are their limitations? I'm still discovering that myself, Naruto admitted. But I do know they're connected to something ancient, older than the ninja world as we know it. The knowledge they contain predates the Sage of Six Paths. Konohamaru whistled softly, which means our usual sources won't have information. We'll need to search older archives, maybe even outside the 5 great nations. There's someone who might help, Hinata suggested quietly. A wandering warrior named Shizuka. She's known for her knowledge of ancient powers. Last I heard, she was in the Land of Iron. Naruto turned to her in surprise. The eyes hadn't shown him this connection, which reinforced Hinata's earlier point about their limitations. That's a good lead, Konohamaru agreed. Naruto, once you've briefed Shikamaru, I want you to find this Shizuka. Take Hinata with you. Her Byakugan might give us insights into how these eyes function. Understood, Naruto said, bowing slightly. As they turned to leave, Konohamaru called after them, and Naruto, be careful, having all the knowledge in the world doesn't make you invincible. Sometimes it just gives you more to lose. The W. Arning followed Naruto as they descended the tower stairs. His old friend was right, omniscience was as much a vulnerability as a strength. Knowing everything meant carrying the weight of that knowledge. Being responsible for acting on it or choosing not to. Outside, the village continued its daily routines, oblivious to the cosmic shift that had occurred. Children played ninja in the streets, merchants haggled over prices. Lovers met for lunch at Ichiraku Ramen. Normal life continued while Naruto's had irrevocably changed. What happens now? Hinata asked as they paused in the shadow of the tower. Naruto gazed out over the village he'd sworn to protect. With the eyes, he could see countless futures branching out from this moment, some bright with promise, others dark with potential tragedy. The choices he made would determine which paths became reality. Now, he said quietly, we prepare. The Void Collective will come for me. The Divine Arbiter may follow. And something tells me this is just the beginning. Hinata's hand found his again, warm and steady. Then we'll face it together. That's what we do. Naruto looked down at her, seeing not just her physical form but the luminous strength of her spirit. The unwavering loyalty that had been his constant throughout the years. Of all the futures the eyes revealed, the ones where she remained by his side seemed brightest. Together, he agreed, squeezing her hand gently as they stepped back into the sunlight. Above them, storm clouds gathered on the distant horizon. The eyes of omniscience had awakened, and the world would never be the same. Chapter 1 End. Chapter 2. Visions and Voices. The midnight air hung heavy with moisture, promising rain by morning. Naruto sat cross-legged atop the Hokage monument, eyes closed in meditation as he sorted through the constant influx of information. 3 weeks had passed since his transformation, and while he'd made progress controlling the eyes of omniscience, moments of solitude remained essential for maintaining his sanity. Below, Konoha slumbered, though not everyone slept. His omniscient perception showed him each restless soul, new parents walking the floor with a colicky infant. Anbu guards patrolling in silent coordination, an elderly man saying goodbye to his dying wife in the hospital. Lives intertwined in ways they never realized, each decision creating ripples that affected countless others. I thought I'd find you here. Naruto didn't need to open his eyes to know Hinata had arrived, her chakra signature as familiar to him as his own heartbeat. He'd sensed her leaving the Hyuga compound, tracked her progress through the village, and calculated her arrival time to the second, yet her presence still brought a comfort that transcended mere knowledge. Just trying to quiet my mind, he said, opening eyes that glowed silver in the darkness. There's always so much. Hinata settled beside him, close enough that their shoulders touched. She'd taken to wearing her hair braided during their training sessions, with practical attire that allowed freedom of movement, a far cry from the formal robes expected of a Hyuga heir. Any progress? She asked, her voice soft against the night. Naruto nodded, gazing out over the village. I've been experimenting with focusing techniques. If I concentrate on a single thread of knowledge and follow it to its source, I can sometimes block out the rest. It's like, he searched for a comparison she would understand, like using your Byakugan to focus on a single chakra point instead of seeing the entire network. Hinata smiled. That makes sense. Both are about filtering information, choosing what deserves your attention. They sat in comfortable silence, something Naruto appreciated more than ever. Most people filled silence with nervous chatter, unaware that he could already perceive their thoughts forming before words were spoken. Hinata simply existed alongside him, accepting quiet moments as necessary rather than uncomfortable. Tomorrow's the day, she said finally. The lightning daimyo arrives at noon. I know. Naruto's tone darkened. The assassination attempt he'd foreseen had been the focus of intense preparation. The security measures are in place. Shikamaru's strategy is solid. Yet doubt nagged at him, one of the frustrating limitations of omniscience. He could see possible futures, but his very interventions changed those possibilities, creating new branches of potential outcomes that hadn't existed before. The act of knowing altered what would be known. You're worried, Hinata observed, not needing special eyes to read his expression. The future isn't fixed, he admitted. Every preventive measure we take creates new variables, new possibilities. It's maddening, like trying to grab smoke. Hinata considered this. Perhaps that's the point. If the future were truly fixed, what would be the purpose of knowing it? The value is in having the chance to change it. Her insight struck him deeply. From the moment he'd acquired the eyes, he'd approached their power as a burden, a torrent of information to be managed and contained. Perhaps instead, it was a gift meant to be applied with discretion. Not a complete revelation but a tool for informed choice. You're right, he said, turning to face her. I've been so focused on knowing everything that I forgot the purpose of knowledge as action. A raindrop landed on his cheek, then another. The storm had arrived earlier than expected, a small reminder that even omniscience had its margins of error. We should go, Hinata said, rising gracefully. Tomorrow will be challenging. We both need rest. Naruto stood, his gaze drawn to the northern horizon where lightning flashed between clouds. Beyond that storm lay the land of iron, where Shizuka reportedly wandered. Their mission to find her would begin after securing the lightning daimyo, another piece in the increasingly complex puzzle of the eyes. Hinata, he said as they descended the stone steps carved into the monument. Thank you for helping me stay grounded. She smiled, rain glistening in her hair. That's what friends do. Friends. The word felt simultaneously right and insufficient. Their relationship had evolved beyond simple friendship but remained undefined, another future with too many variables to predict with certainty. As they reached the village streets, Naruto's omniscient perception suddenly flared with warning. A presence on the outskirts of the village, unfamiliar chakra signatures moving with purpose toward the gates. His mind automatically calculated their trajectory, speed, and likely intentions. What is it? Hinata asked, noticing his sudden alertness. Intruders, he replied, already moving toward the threat. 4 of them, approaching from the east. Not ordinary bandits. Their chakra patterns suggest specialized training. Hinata activated her Byakugan without hesitation, extending her own perception outward. I see them. Their chakra networks are unusual, artificially modified somehow. They raced through rain-slicked streets, past darkened shops and homes. Naruto sent a shadow clone to alert the Anbu while they intercepted the intruders directly. The eyes showed him the optimal route to intersect the unknown group before they reached populated areas. They found the intruders in a clearing just inside the village B. Oundari, 4 figures in black tactical gear bearing the now familiar symbol of the Void Collective. Unlike the hunters Naruto had encountered previously, these individuals moved with the precision of elite operatives, maintaining perfect formation despite the darkness and rain. I told you they'd send better hunters, Naruto murmured, analyzing their capabilities through the eyes. Each carried specialized equipment, chakra suppressors, sensory amplifiers, and weapons designed to incapacitate rather than kill. Hinata dropped into her gentle fist stance. What's the plan? We need one alive for questioning, Naruto replied, his mind rapidly cycling through combat scenarios. The leader, the woman with the dual tanto. The others are expendable if necessary. His coldly tactical assessment surprised even himself. The eyes brought a detachment to his thinking, calculating human lives as variables in an equation. He forced himself to remember these were people making choices, not simply obstacles to be removed. Let's try to take them all alive, he amended. But the leader is priority. They launched their ambush from opposite directions, a pincer movement that separated the 4 intruders. Naruto moved with preternatural precision, each step and strike guided by omniscient foresight. He could see attacks before they were executed, countering with minimal effort while conserving energy. Why for the moments that truly required it? 2 of the intruders immediately focused on him, recognizing the silver eyes that marked their target. They attacked in perfect synchronization, one launching a barrage of Senbon coated in some kind of tranquilizer while the other performed hand signs for a Earth-style containment jutsu. Naruto dodged the Senbon effortlessly, each projectile passing through empty air as he moved exactly where they weren't. The Earth jutsu posed more challenge. The ground beneath his feet liquefied, threatening to swallow him into immobility. But the eyes had already shown him this outcome. And his response came without conscious thought. He molded his chakra into wind nature, creating a cushion of compressed air that kept him suspended above the liquefied earth. From this position, he formed a modified Rasengan in each hand, smaller than his standard version but infused with the strange silver energy that had manifested since acquiring the eyes. Twin Knowing Strike, he called, driving both spiraling orbs toward his opponents. The jutsu didn't hit them directly but instead struck the ground between them, releasing pulses of energy that disrupted their chakra networks without causing permanent damage. Both collapsed, temporarily paralyzed but unharmed. Naruto landed lightly beside them, already turning his attention to where Hinata engaged the other two intruders. Her fighting style had evolved in recent years, incorporating elements of traditional Hyuga techniques with her own innovations. She moved like flowing water between the two attackers, her Byakugan allowing her to target precise chakra points even in the rain-drenched darkness. The female leader proved particularly skilled, evading Hinata's strikes while maneuvering for a counterattack. Her Tonto blades hummed with strange energy that the eyes identified as chakra-disrupting technology. One clean hit could potentially disable Hinata's gentle fist techniques. Naruto was at Hinata's side in an instant, moving faster than ordinary perception could track. Together, they forced the remaining intruders into defensive positions, their combined attack styles creating an overwhelming press that even elite operatives couldn't withstand indefinitely. The fourth intruder fell to Hinata's precise strikes, his chakra network temporarily sealed. Only the leader remained, backing away as she realized her team had failed. "Vessel," she addressed Naruto, her voice calm despite her precarious position. "You've improved your control. Impressive for someone who's carried the eyes for mere weeks." "Who are you?" Naruto demanded. "What does the Void Collective want with me?" The woman's lips curved in a slight smile. "We are the shepherds of knowledge. The eyes have chosen poorly again, a vessel too attached to this world. Too entangled in human concerns." "The eyes didn't choose me," Naruto countered. "I found them by accident." "There are no accidents when it comes to omniscience," she replied. "Only paths not yet understood." Before Naruto could question her further, she made a familiar hand sign, the same teleportation technique the previous hunters had used to escape. This time, however, the eyes revealed its mechanism to him, and he countered with precise timing. "Wind style. Sealing sphere," he said, creating a dome of swirling air that trapped the woman inside, preventing the teleportation jutsu from completing. The technique came to him instinctively, knowledge flowing from the eyes into practical application. The leader's expression shifted from confidence to uncertainty as she realized her escape had failed. "You begin to understand," she observed. "But comprehension brings danger. The more you use the eyes, the sooner the arbiter will notice." "What is this arbiter?" Hinata asked, stepping forward. "Why does it oppose the eyes?" The woman turned her attention to Hinata, studying her with clinical interest. "A Hyuga. How fitting that one born with lesser eyes would stand beside true omniscience." She redirected to Naruto. "The arbiter maintains balance. Omniscience belongs to the divine, not to mortals. Those who reach beyond their station invite judgment." "That doesn't answer my question." Naruto pressed. "What is the arbiter? A person? An organization?" "Neither. Both. The embodiment of cosmic consequence." The woman's expression grew distant. Quote, "Our master seeks to prevent the judgment that follows usurpation of divine sight. To preserve the vessel by controlling the power's use." Anbu operatives materialized around them, summoned by Naruto's shadow clone. The woman noted their arrival with resigned acceptance. "This conversation is finished," she said. "But remember, vessel, the eyes see all, but wisdom lies in knowing when not to look." With those cryptic words, she bit down sharply. Naruto's omniscient perception identified the poison capsule hidden in her molar too late to prevent its effects. She collapsed, her body convulsing briefly before going still. "No." Naruto knelt beside her, checking for signs of life though the eyes already confirmed her death. We needed her alive. The Anbu captain approached. The others, unconscious but stable, Hinata reported. They should be taken into custody for questioning. As the Anbu secured the surviving intruders, Naruto searched the leader's body, finding only standard equipment. Tea and a small medallion identical to the one he'd taken from the previous hunter. The eyes provided no special insight into its significance, another frustrating limitation of omniscience. Some Nold GE required context that even all-seeing eyes couldn't provide. Rain continued falling, washing blood into the soil. Naruto stood, troubled by the encounter and its implications. The Void Collective W, as clearly more organized and determined than they'd initially assumed. And this, Arbiter, sounded increasingly like a genuine threat rather than a myth used to manipulate him. We should report to Konohamaru, Hinata said, touching his arm gently. This changes our security calculations for tomorrow. Naruto nodded, his mind already processing adjustments to their plans. The attempted infiltratio N suggested the collective might target the Lightning Daimyo's visit, either to create chaos or to force Naruto to reveal the full extent of his abilities publicly. As they made their way back toward the Hokage Tower, a sudden vision flashed through his mind. A gathering of dignitaries, an explosion of glass, a figure with a mirror reflecting impossible light. The premonition was sharper than previous ones, almost painfully vivid in its details. Naruto. Hinata's concerned voice pulled him back to the present. What did you see? He blinked, the silver light in his eyes momentarily flaring brighter. Tomorrow. The assassination attempt. It's changed. Different method, different target. His voice sounded distant even to his own ears. They're not after the daimyo anymore. They're after me. Morning brought clear skies and no trace of the previous night's storm. A good omen according to the superstitious citizens who lined Konoha's main thoroughfare awaiting the Lightning Daimyo's procession. Banners hung from buildings, and a festival atmosphere prevailed despite the heightened security evident to any trained observer. Naruto stood atop the administration building, surveying the gathered crowd. His formal attire, a black jacket with orange accents over traditional mesh armor, marked him as an official representative of Konoha rather than a security detail. Beside him, Hinata wore ceremonial hyuga robes, her hair arranged in an elegant updo befitting her clan status. You look uncomfortable, she observed, adjusting his collar with practiced hands. I'm more used to combat gear than formal wear, he admitted. In truth, his discomfort stemmed more from the weight of foreknowledge than from his clothing. The eyes had shown him that today's events would reshape his path irrevocably. Though the specifics remained frustratingly blurred. Everything is in position, Shikamaru reported, joining them on the rooftop. As Konohamaru's chief advisor, he'd coordinated the village's response to Naruto's warning. Anbu teams covering every approach, sensory barriers active, evacuation routes prepared. If anything happens, we're ready. Naruto nodded, his silver eyes scanning patterns invisible to others. Something still feels wrong. The vision showed an indoor setting, not a street procession. The reception at the Hokage residence, Hinata suggested. After the public welcoming. That makes sense, Shikamaru agreed. More controlled environment, easier to secure. We've tripled the guards there and personally vetted every server and attendant. Horns sounded at the village gate, announcing the daimyo's arrival. The procession wound through streets lined with cheering citizens, an impressive display of ceremonial guards in lightning bolt emblazoned armor surrounding an ornate palanquin. Naruto watched impassively, the eyes allowing him to simultaneously monitor the procession, scan the crowd for threats, and observe Anbu operatives moving through shadows. Konohamaru's greeting them now, he noted, tracking the young Hokage's movements as he approached the palanquin with a formal bow. No immediate threats detected, Shikamaru sighed, having you as a security system is both reassuring and unsettling, you know that. Try living with it, Naruto replied dryly. The procession continued smoothly toward the Hokage residence, where the formal reception would take place. As official representatives, Naruto and Hinata descended to join the welcoming party, maintaining vigilance beneath diplomatic smiles. The Hokage residence had been transformed for the Akkas. Ion. Elegant decorations in blue and gold, refreshment tables laden with delicacies, musicians playing traditional pieces in the corner. Dignitaries from various nations mingled with Konoha officials. The usual political maneuvering disguised as pleasant conversation. The lightning daimyo proved younger than Naruto expected, perhaps 30, with sharp features and calculating eyes that missed nothing. His ceremonial robes couldn't quite hide the athletic build beneath, suggesting he wasn't merely a political figurehead. Uzumaki Naruto, the daimyo said when they were formally introduced. Your reputation precedes you. His gaze lingered on Naruto's transformed eyes. Though reports of your recent evolution were apparently understated, Naruto bowed precisely the correct depth for their respective stations, a protocol he'd never bothered learning but now simply knew. Lord Daimyo, Konoha welcomes you and your esteemed delegation. So formal, the daimyo remarked with a slight smile. Not what I expected from the legendary unpredictable ninja. People change, Naruto replied evenly. Indeed they do. The daimyo's attention shifted to Hinata. And the Hyuga heir, your clan's Visual prowess is renowned throughout the nations. I wonder what you make of your colleague's new capabilities. Hinata maintained perfect composure. Each dojutsu serves its purpose, my lord. Konoha values all such gifts when used in service to peace. The diplomatic non-answer seemed to amuse the daimyo. Well said. I look forward to discussing the implications of such gifts during our negotiations. As he moved on to greet other dignitaries, Naruto and Hinata exchanged glances. The political ramifications of the eyes were becoming increasingly apparent. Knowledge was power, and omniscience represented a shift in the balance that made many uncomfortable. He's not the threat, Naruto murmured, eyes scanning the gathering. But something's not right. I can feel it. Hinata activated her Byakugan discreetly, supplementing his omniscient perception with her own unique visual abilities. The chakra signatures all match our security records. No obvious imposters. Naruto frowned, the silver light in his eyes pulsing slightly as he deepened his focus. The eyes showed him countless overlapping possibilities, conversations continuing peacefully, subtle political maneuvers, glasses raised in toast, but nothing that matched the violent premonition from the previous night. Until a server entered from the kitchen carrying a tray of crystal flutes filled with sparkling wine. The moment Naruto saw the server's face, recognition flashed through him, not from memory but from omniscient knowledge. The woman's features matched no one in Konoha's records, yet the eyes identified her immediately, Amaya. Elite assassin affiliated with the Frost Country's shadow operations, specialized in undetectable poisons and infiltration. There, he whispered to Hinata, subtly indicating the server. She doesn't belong here. Hinata's Byakugan confirmed his suspicion. Her chakra signature is masked. Very sophisticated technique. I almost missed it. Naruto calculated potential approaches, the eyes howling him branching paths of intervention. Direct confrontation risked civilian casualties if she carried explosive tags, a common assassin's backup plan. Subtle extraction might allow questioning to identify her employers. But the optimal path required careful timing. Stay with the daimyo, he instructed Hinata. I'll handle this. He moved through the crowd with casual precision, timing his approach to intercept the server before she reached the head table where Konohamaru and the daimyo were seated. To observers, it appeared he was simply helping himself to a drink. To the assassin, his Su-Den appearance in her path registered as the threat it was. Those glasses look heavy, Naruto said pleasantly, reaching for the tray. Allow me to help. The woman's eyes narrowed fractionally, the only outward sign of her recognition. Thank you, sir, but I can manage. As their hands briefly connected over the tray, Naruto leaned closer. I know who you are, Amaya. And I know those drinks are poisoned with colorless, odorless snowthorn extract, fatal within minutes, untraceable in autopsy. Her composure cracked, eyes widening in shock. How? You have two choices, he continued conversationally, maintaining his smile for observers. Surrender quietly and cooperate, or resist and die. The Anbu behind you and to your left has orders to eliminate you at my signal. Amaya's gaze flicked briefly toward the indicated position, confirming the presence Naruto had sensed. Her shoulders slumped slightly in resignation. Smart choice, Naruto approved, taking the tray completely from her hands. He caught Shikamaru's eye across the room, giving a subtle nod that conveyed the situation. Within moments, two disguised Anbu escorts appeared, flanking Amaya and guiding her discreetly toward an exit. To the oblivious guests, it merely appeared that a server was being relieved of duty. Naruto placed the tray of poisoned drinks on a side table where no one would accidentally consume them, then rejoined Hinata near the daimyo. Situation contained, he murmured. Shikamaru will oversee the interrogation. Well done, she replied softly. But something still feels wrong. That seemed almost too easy. Her concern mirrored his own unease. The assassination attempt had been sophisticated in planning but amateurish in execution, as though meant to be detected and prevented. The eyes showed him no immediate secondary threats, yet the premonition of shattering glass and reflected light remained unfulfilled. The reception continued without further incident, diplomats and officials engaged in the delicate dance of international relations. Naruto maintained vigilance throughout, occasionally catching the lightning daimyo studying him with undisguised interest. As the event drew to a close, Konohamaru invited the daimyo and his closest advisors to a more private discussion in the council chamber, a standard procedure for visiting dignitaries. Naruto and Hinata, as representatives of Konoha's most prominent clans, were included in this smaller gathering. The council chamber featured a long table of polished wood beneath a wall of windows overlooking the village. As attendees took their assigned seats, Naruto's unease intensified. The room matched elements from his vision, the arrangement of chairs, the angle of light through glass, the positioning of guards. Something's coming, he whispered to Hinata. Be ready. She nodded almost imperceptibly, her posture relaxed but prepared for instant action. Konohamaru had just begun formal welcoming remarks when Naruto's omniscient perception registered a disturbance at the atomic level, air molecules vibrating at increasing frequency, creating a harmonic resonance that human ears couldn't detect but glass would respond to. He was moving before conscious thought, launching across the table toward the daimyo as the wall of windows exploded inward, sending thousands of razor-sharp shards flying toward the gathered officials. Ime seemed to slow as the eyes calculated trajectories, showing him exactly where each deadly fragment would land. Wind style. Protective sphere. He shouted, creating a dome of swirling air that GHT the glass shards before they could reach their targets. The technique required precise chakra control. Too weak and the glass would penetrate, too strong and the shards would be propelled back toward the street below. Hinata moved simultaneously, her Byakugan already identifying the attack's source. Rooftop across the street, single chakra signature. Anbu guards surrounded the daimyo and other officials, creating a defensive formation while Naruto maintained the wind barrier. Through the shattered windows, he glimpsed a figure on the opposite rooftop, someone holding what appeared to be a mirror that caught the sunlight and focused it with impossible precision. Hinata, with me, he called, releasing the wind technique once the glass had settled. Shikamaru, secure the diplomats. They launched through the empty window frame, crossing the distance between buildings in a single chakra-enhanced leap. The attacker didn't flee as expected but instead turned to face them, mirror held before them like a shield. Naruto's eyes widened in recognition as they landed on the rooftop, confronting a slender figure in a white combat suit emblazoned with the Void Collective's symbol. It wasn't the uniform that captured his attention, however, but the attacker's face, young, with delicate features and eyes that shifted color like quicksilver. Kagami, he said, the name coming to him through the eyes, knowledge. The mirror wielder smiled. The vessel remembers me, or rather, the eyes do. We've never actually met in this life. Who are you? Hinata demanded, dropping into a combat stance. I am the reflection, Kagami replied cryptically, the counter to omniscience. For every force, there must be balance. Naruto studied their opponent carefully, the eyes revealing unusual chakra TTERNS flowing through the mirror, a specialized tool, not merely a weapon but a conduit for a unique ability. You're with the Void Collective, he stated. Another hunter sent to capture me. Kagami laughed, the sound musical and strangely childlike. The Collective are fools who understand nothing. They seek to control what cannot be controlled. I serve a higher purpose. Without warning, Kagami raised the mirror, angling it directly at Naruto's silver eyes. The surface flashed brilliantly, and for the first time since acquiring omniscience, Naruto experienced complete sensory blackout. The constant flow of information ceased, replaced by absolute nothingness that felt like falling through infinite space. Naruto. Hinata's voice sounded distant, echoing as though from miles away. He staggered, momentarily blind and disoriented. The eyes had become such an integral part of his perception that their sudden silencing left him vulnerable, unable to anticipate movements or calculate responses. Hinata moved protectively in front of him, facing Kagami. "What did you do to him?" "Merely provided a moment of blessed ignorance," Kagami replied, twirling the mirror with practiced ease. Mirror reflects omniscience back upon itself, creating a temporary paradox. "Don't worry, it won't last." Unfortunately, Naruto's vision began returning, the world resolving in normal colors rather than the enhanced perception of the eyes. He could feel their power rebuilding within him, like a dam gradually refilling after a breach. "Why attack the diplomats?" he demanded, buying time for his abilities to recover. "They have nothing to do with the eyes." "A demonstration," Kagami explained, gesturing expansively. "I needed to confirm the extent of your control." "Quite impressive, by the way, Mo. Street new vessels can barely filter basic information, let alone execute combat techniques with such precision." Hinata shifted slightly, her Byakugan tracking Kagami's chakra network. "You've encountered others with the eyes before." "The previous vessel," Kagami acknowledged with a slight bow. "A brilliant woman, though ultimately too rigid in her thinking. The Arbiter found her wanting." "What happened to her?" Naruto asked, though the eyes were already showing him fragments of the answer. "A battle of cosmic proportions, a judgment rendered, a life extinguished. The same thing that happens to all who carry omniscience too long," Kagami said, voice softening with what might have been genuine regret. "The divine reclaims what belongs to it alone." Naruto felt his powers fully returning, the silver light brightening in his eyes. The eyes showed him Kagami's capabilities now, a reflection specialist whose mirror could temporarily reverse any ability directed at it, including the eyes themselves. "You're warning me," Naruto realized. "Not trying to kill me." Kagami smiled. "Perhaps. Or perhaps I'm simply playing my assigned role in a drama that has unfolded countless times before." The mirror wielder backed toward the roof's edge. "The Arbiter awakens, vessel. Your actions have drawn attention. Choose your path carefully. Omniscience without wisdom is merely trivia." Before either Naruto or Hinata could respond, Kagami leapt backward off the roof, the mirror flashing brilliantly. When they rushed to the edge, the street below was empty, no sign of impact or escape route. "That's impossible," Hinata said, her Byakugan scanning in all directions. "They've completely vanished." Naruto frowned, the eyes providing no explanation for the disappearance. Another limitation, Omniscience. He apparently had blind spots when it came to whatever technology or technique Kagami employed. "We need to return to the diplomats," he said after a moment. "Make sure everyone's safe." As they made their way back to the council chamber, Naruto processed what they'd learned. Kagami represented something different from the Void Collective, perhaps an independent agent or representative of another faction interested in the eyes. The attack had been carefully calibrated to test his abilities rather than cause harm, suggesting evaluation rather than elimination was the primary goal. Most troubling was the repeated reference to the Arbiter and the implication that previous bearers of the eyes had met unfortunate ends. The cosmic entity or force sounded increasingly like a concrete threat rather than metaphysical concept. Back at the council chamber, the situation had been contained. Workers were already removing broken glass while Anbu maintained a protective perimeter around the diplomats. Konohamaru met them at the entrance, his expression a mixture of concern and relief. "Everyone's accounted for," he reported. "No injuries thanks to your quick action. The daimyo is impressed, to say the least." Naruto nodded, glad for the positive outcome while still processing Kagami's warning. "The attacker escaped, but we learned some useful information. We'll debrief fully later," Konohamaru said, lowering his voice. "Right now, I need you both back in diplomatic mode. This incident has actually created an unexpected opportunity." He guided them back to the table, where the lightning daimyo sat looking remarkably composed given the circumstances. When he saw Naruto approach, he smiled with newfound respect. "Uzumaki Naruto," he said, "it seems the rumors of your new abilities were not exaggerated." That was quite a display of foresight and skill. Naruto bowed respectfully. "I'm glad no one was harmed, Lord Daimyo." "Indeed." The daimyo's expression turned thoughtful. "Such PR. Addictive capabilities would be invaluable in maintaining peace between our nations. I believe this creates additional avenues for our discussions, Hokage-sama. Konohamaru nodded diplomatically. Always eager to explore cooperation that benefits both our peoples. As the conversation turned to politics and alliance terms, Naruto exchanged glances with Hinata. The diplomatic implications of his abilities were becoming apparent. Omniscience represented not just personal power but potential political leverage in a world where information drove policy. The eyes showed him branching timelines. Extending from this moment, somewhere his abilities became a cornerstone of unprecedented international cooperation, others where nations competed for access to his foreknowledge and darker paths fear of his power led to isolation or conflict. Once again, knowing possible futures provided no certainty about which would manifest. Choice remained the uncontrollable variable, his own and others. Night had fallen by the time the diplomatic meetings concluded. The Lightning Daimyo had returned to his accommodations under heavy guard, and Konohamaru had convened an emergency session with his advisors to discuss both the attack and the political developments that followed. The daimyo wants access to your abilities, Shikamaru summarized bluntly after all reports had been delivered. Not directly, of course, he couched it in diplomatic language about shared security interests and cooperative threat assessment, but the intent is clear. And he won't be the last, Konohamaru added, looking unusually tired. Once word spreads about today's incident, and every nation will have similar interests. Naruto leaned against the wall, arms crossed. I'm not a tool to be borrowed or shared. No one's suggesting that, Konohamaru assured him, but we need to develop a coherent policy about how your abilities integrate with Konoha's diplomatic position. Otherwise, we risk appearing either secretive or exploitative. The discussion continued late into the night, weighing options and implications. Throughout, Naruto found himself increasingly uncomfortable with the political dimensions of his transformation. The eyes had been thrust upon him without warning or instruction, now they threatened to make him either a valuable asset or a dangerous liability in international relations. When the meeting finally adjourned near midnight, Naruto and Hinata walked together through quiet streets. Their mission to find Shizuka in the Land of Iron had been delayed by the day's events, but would begin tomorrow, a fact that brought both anticipation and concern. You're troubled, Hinata observed as they paused on a bridge overlooking the river. Moonlight silvered the water's surface, complementing the glow of Naruto's eyes. I didn't ask for any of this, he said after a moment. The eyes, the politics, being hunted by the collective, now this arbiter. Sometimes I wonder if those ruins was the worst luck I've ever had. Hinata considered his words carefully. Would you give them up if you could? Return to how things were before? The question caught him off guard. Would he? The eyes had brought pain, isolation, and danger, yet also understanding beyond anything he'd imagined possible. They'd shown him connections between people and events that revealed the true complexity of the world. And on a personal level, they'd deepened his bond with Hinata, whose steady presence had become his anchor amid chaos. I don't know, he admitted finally. Part of me wants say yes, go back to when life was simpler. But another part knows I've seen too much now. There's no unknowing what I've learned. Hinata nodded, understanding in her pale eyes. The eyes found you for a reason, Naruto-kun. Of all people who might have discovered those ruins, it was you, someone with the strength and heart to use such power wisely. Kagami didn't seem to think wisdom was my strong suit, he said with a wry smile. Kagami doesn't know you like I do. She turned to face him fully. You've always had a gift for finding the right path, even without omniscience. The eyes didn't change who you are. They just gave you more information to work with. Your heart still guides your choices. Her faith in him was humbling. Throughout his life, Hinata had seen strength in him when sometimes even himself, saw only limitations. That unwavering belief had sustained him through countless challenges. Now, facing perhaps his greatest trial, her confidence remained unshaken. We should rest, Naruto said, reluctant to end their conversation but aware of tomorrow's journey. The Land of Iron is at least 3 days' travel, even pushing hard. Hinata nodded, though neither moved immediately to leave the peaceful spot. The village slept around them, citizens unaware of how drastically the world was changing. Naruto's omniscient perception showed him each dreamer, each night watchman, each restless soul, lives interconnected in ways they never realized. Naruto-kun, Hinata said softly, whatever comes next, whatever this arbiter might be, we'll face it together. You're not alone in this. He smiled, a genuine expression that brightened his silver eyes. I know. That makes all the difference. As they finally parted ways for the night, Naruto felt a curious sensation, omething-like peace despite the uncertainty ahead. The eyes showed him countless possible futures branching from this moment, but for once, he chose not to look too closely at any of them. Some paths were better walked step by step, without the burden of foreknowledge. Dawn painted the eastern sky with pale gold and rose as Naruto and Hinata assembled at Konoha's main gate. Both wore practical traveling gear, reinforced cloaks over combat attire, supply pouches, and minimal personal effects. The mission to find Shizuka required speed and discretion rather than diplomatic formality. The interrogation of the assassin yielded some useful information, Shikamaru reported, joining them for a final briefing. Amaya confirmed she was hired through intermediaries, never met her employer directly. Payment came from a Frost Country account, but the money trail goes cold after that. The collective? Naruto asked, adjusting his pack. Shikamaru shook his head. She's never heard of them. This Ms-like opportunistic political maneuvering using the chaos around your transformation as cover. Someone attempting to destabilize relations between lightning and fire countries, Hinata surmised. Exactly. Classic third-party manipulation. Shikamaru handed Naruto a small scroll. This contains her full statement and what we know about her background. Might be useful if your paths cross again. Naruto tucked the scroll away, the eyes already providing him detailed knowledge of Amaya's history, orphaned during border conflicts, trained by Frost Country's Covert Operations Division, renowned F.R. never failing a contract until yesterday. The information came automatically, without effort, another example of how the Omniscience functioned. Any last-minute intelligence on Shizuka's whereabouts? He asked. Last confirmed sighting was in Kenta Village, near the Three Wolves Mountain Pass, Shikamaru replied. She was researching ancient temple ruins there, apparently has quite the shoulder. Why reputation despite her warrior background? Hinata nodded. The Hyuga archives mention her occasionally, a wandering sage with specialized knowledge of pre-shinobi era artifacts and energies. Sounds like exactly who we need, Naruto said. With luck, she'll have insights about the eyes that even Omniscience can't provide. Konohamaru appeared at the gate, looking more like his youthful self in the early morning light than the burdened Hokage he'd become. Safe journey, he said, clasping Naruto's forearm in the traditional shinobi farewell. Remember your primary objective is information gathering, not engagement. If you encounter collective agents or this Kagami character again, retreat if possible. Understood, Naruto assured him, though both knew such orders were always situational. We'll send updates via Toad Messenger at regular intervals. With final farewells exchanged, they departed, taking to the trees once beyond the village perimeter. Traveling by uppermost branches load for greater speed and reduced the chance of encountering other travelers. Naruto set a challenging pace that Hinata matched effortlessly, her training having long since erased any gap in their physical capabilities. By midday, they had covered impressive distance, the forests of Fire Country gradually giving way to the more rugged terrain that bordered the Land of Iron. The neutral samurai Nation maintained strict independence from ninja affairs, making it both a haven for those seeking to avoid shinobi politics and a complicated jurisdiction for official Konoha operatives. They paused fly at a mountain stream to refill water containers and consult their route. While Hinata studied the map, Naruto expanded his omniscient perception, scanning the surrounding area for potential threats or useful information. The eyes showed him each animal in the forest, travelers on distant roads, weather patterns forming over mountain ranges, a tapestry of information that he'd learned to filter according to relevance. Most crucial was the absence of pursuers. Neither void collective agents nor mysterious mirror wielders appeared within his extensive perception range. The mountain pass will be the most exposed part of our journey, Hinata noted, tracing the route with her finger. We should time our crossing for dawn tomorrow when fog typically provides natural cover. Naruto nodded, impressed by her tactical thinking. There's a sheltered valley about 4 hours ahead, good place to rest tonight and prepare for the crossing. Hinata looked up with a slight smile. The eyes told you that. Actually, no, he admitted, returning her smile. I've been through this region before, during training with Jiraiya. Some knowledge comes from experience, not omniscience. They continued air journey through afternoon and into early evening, making excellent time across increasingly vertical terrain. The land rose steadily toward the mountain range that served as natural border between nations. Ancient forests giving way to sparser pine and fir that clung to rocky slopes. As predicted, they reached the sheltered valley with daylight to spare, a protected depression between ridgelands where a small lake fed by mountain springs provided fresh water. Stone outcroppings created natural windbreaks, and the thick canopy offered concealment from aerial observation. Perfect campsite, Hinata approved as they shed their packs. I'll secure the perimeter. While she established subtle chakra detection barriers around their position, a Hyuga specialty that would alert them to any approach. Oching presence. Naruto gathered firewood and prepared a small cooking pit. Years of field missions had made such tasks automatic, requiring little conscious thought. This left his mind free to explore the constant stream of omniscient information, practicing the filtering techniques he'd been developing. By focusing on specific questions rather than allowing all knowledge to flow indiscriminately, he could reduce the overwhelming volume to manageable insights. Show me Shizuka's current location, he directed his thoughts. The eyes responded with a clear image, a woman with silver-streaked black hair arranged in a complex braid, studying ancient carvings in what appeared to be underground ruins. Her exact location remained frustratingly vague, but Naruto could tell she was somewhere within the mountain range ahead. Perhaps 2 days' journey at most. Show me threats between our position and hers, he specified. This query produced more troubling results, flashes of white uniformed figures moving through mountain passes. A patrol of samurai investigating reports of border incursions, and most concerning, the shadowy presence of what appeared to be Void Collective agents establishing a nighttouring station on one of the main routes through the range. Naruto was still processing these visions when Hinata returned, her Byakugan deactivating as she approached the small fire he'd built. Perimeter secure, she reported. No signs of human presence within 5 kilometers. Good, but we may face complications ahead. Naruto described what the eyes had shown him, watching her expression shift from calm to concerned. A monitoring station suggests they anticipated this journey, she observed, settling beside him. They're watching major routes to intercept us. Naruto nodded. And the samurai patrols complicate things further. The Land of Iron takes its neutrality seriously. Any perceived shinobi operation in their territory could create diplomatic incidents. We'll need an alternate route, Hinata concluded. Something unexpected. They discussed options while preparing a simple meal of field rations supplemented with herbs Hinata had gathered. The most promising alternative involved a seldom used hunting trail that skirted the eastern edge of Three Wolves Mountain, longer but less likely to be monitored. As night deepened around their small camp, conversation shifted from tactical planning to more personal reflections. The relative privacy of field missions often fostered such openness, away from the social constraints and responsibilities of village life. I've been wondering, Hinata said as they sat watching flames dance in the small fire pit, do the eyes show you everything about people? Their thoughts, feelings, secrets. Naruto considered the question carefully. Not exactly. I see facts, histories, behaviors, physical responses. I can predict likely actions based on patterns. But emotions are fuzzier. I know when someone's heart rate increases or stress hormones release. But understanding why requires context the eyes don't always provide. That's reassuring, in a way, she said with a small smile. Some things should remain private. Agreed. He poked at the fire with a stick, watching sparks rise toward stars. Sometimes I think true understanding comes from connection, not observation. The eyes give me data, not meaning. Hinata studied him thoughtfully. You've changed since acquiring them. Not just your appearance, but your perspective. You're more contemplative. Hard not to be when you see the ripple effects of every action, he admitted. Even small choices create cascading consequences across countless lives. It's humbling. But you haven't lost yourself, she affirmed. Your compassion, your determination to protect others, those haven't changed. Their conversation continued late into the night, touching on philosophical questions neither had much considered before the eyes entered their lives. What was the purpose of knowledge without wisdom to apply it? Did seeing potential futures create responsibility to act on that foresight? Could genuine choice exist alongside perfect prediction? Eventually, they established watch rotations. Though Naruto's omniscient perception made traditional surveillance largely redundant, still, maintaining standard protocols provided structure and normalcy in circumstances that were anything but normal. During his watch, Naruto found himself focusing his omniscient perception on Hinata as she slept, not in violation of privacy but in appreciation of complexity. The eyes showed him her steady heartbeat, the efficient circulation of chakra even in rest, the subtle activation of her brain during dream states. Yet these biological observations told him nothing about her thoughts, her courage, her unwavering loyalty, the qualities that made her essential to his journey. Another limitation of omniscience, perhaps the most significant, it could show everything except what truly mattered most. Dawn arrived shrouded in mist that transformed the mountain landscape into a ghostly realm of half-seen shapes and muffled sounds, perfect conditions for crossing exposed terrain. They broke camp efficiently, leaving minimal trace of their presence, and began the ascent toward the mountain pass. The hunting trail proved more challenging than anticipated, steep in sections, only vanishing entirely where rockslides had altered the landscape. Without Hinata's Byakugan to trace the original route and Naruto's omniscient perception to identify stable footing, progress would have been painfully slow. By mid-morning, they had reached the highest point of the pass, where ancient stone markers indicated the formal boundary between Fire Country and the Land of Iron. Mist still clung to higher elevations, providing welcome concealment as they paused to assess their surroundings. Samurai patrol approaching from the north, Naruto said quietly, the eyes showing him 6 moored figures approximately 2 kilometers distant. Routine sweep, not looking for us specifically. Hinata nodded, her Byakugan confirming his assessment. We should wait for them to pass. Engaging would only complicate our mission. They found shelter beneath an overhanging cliff, pressed close against weather-worn stone as they waited for the patrol to complete its route. The proximity highlighted their different perceptive abilities, Hinata's Byakugan tracking the patrol's chakra signatures with precision while Naruto's omniscience provided broader context about their purpose and patterns. They're investigating reports of unusual energy signatures in the mountains, he murmured, the information coming to him as clearly as if he'd read their mission briefing. Samurai leadership is concerned about potential incursions by foreign powers. Or the collective. Hinata wondered. Both, potentially, plus something else. Naruto frowned, the eyes showing him fragmented images of Samurai encountering strange phenomena throughout the mountain range, unexplained lights, temporary distortions in physical space, artifacts that defied conventional analysis. There's something about these mountains that attracts the unusual. The ruins I found might not be unique. Once the patrol passed beyond detection range, they continued their journey, descending into dense pine forests that covered the northern slopes. The Land of Iron's interior was known for harsh weather and rugged terrain, a natural fortress that had helped its samurai defenders maintain independence throughout centuries of shinobi conflicts. By late afternoon, they had reached lower elevations where mist gave way to cold mountain sunlight. According to their updated route, Kenta village lay another day's journey ahead. Nestled in a valley known for hot springs and ancient shrines. As they established camp for the night in a protected ravine, Naruto sensed a disturbance at the edge of his omniscient perception, not a physical presence but a kind of ripple in the fabric of reality itself. The sensation was similar to what he'd experienced when Kagami's mirror disrupted his abilities, but more diffuse. Something's wrong, he said, rising abruptly. I can feel it, like static in my perception. Hinata activated her Byakugan immediately. I don't see anything unusual within my range. It's not something visible, Naruto tried to explain. More like interference, as if the eyes are being partially blocked or distorted. He expanded his focus, pushing his perception to its limits. The disturbance seemed centered approximately 5 kilometers east, directly off their planned route but potentially significant given their mission to understand the eyes better. We should investigate, he decided. Wait, Veer's causing this might be related to what we're seeking. Hinata nodded, trusting his judgment despite not sharing his perception of the anomaly. They secured their campsite and moved toward the disturbance, proceeding with caution through increasingly unfamiliar territory. The landscape changed subtly as they approached the source, vegetation growing in unnatural patterns, rocks arranged in conference. Figurations that seemed deliberately placed rather than naturally formed. Even the air felt different, carrying strange scents and sounds that neither could identify precisely. There's a structure ahead, Hinata reported, her Byakugan penetrating the gathering twilight. Appears to be ruins, similar to what you described finding before. They crested a small rise and found themselves looking down at a circular clearing containing what remained of an ancient building. Unlike the relatively intact ruins where Naruto had discovered the eyes, this site showed evidence of recent disturbance, excavated areas, research equipment, and most significantly, fresh footprints in soft earth. Someone's been studying this place, Naruto observed, kneeling to examine marks in the soil. Recently, within the past day, the eyes provided immediate identification, boot prints matching the distinctive tread pattern favored by scholars from the Land of Iron's Historical Preservation Society, mixed with enough set belonging to someone with lighter stride and unusual gait suggesting combat training. Shizuka, he said with certainty. She was here, working with local researchers. Hinata scanned the surrounding forest. No one present now. They must have returned to the village for the night. They approached the ruins cautiously, alert for traps or guardians similar to what Naruto had encountered previously. The structure appeared to be a temple of some kind, its remaining walls covered in the same spiral patterns and ancient script he recognized from his fateful mission. At the center stood an altar stone identical in design to the one that had housed the crystal containing the eyes of Omniscience. This one, however, was empty, its central depression showing signs of something having been removed long ago. As Naruto placed his hand on the altar, the interference in his omniscient perception intensified dramatically. The constant flow of information stuttered and fragmented, creating gaps in his awareness that felt like sudden blindness after perfect sight. This place is connected to the eyes somehow, he said, voice tight with discomfort. It's like it recognizes the power I carry but rejects it simultaneously. Hinata moved closer, concerned. Should we leave? This clearly affects you negatively. Before he could respond, his fractured omniscience showed him a crucial detail, a hidden chamber beneath the altar. Accessible via pressure mechanism in the stone base. Without conscious thought, his fingers found and activated the release. The ground trembled slightly as a section of flooring slid aside, revealing narrow stone steps descending into darkness. Cool air wafted upward, carrying the scent of age and secrets long undisturbed. There's something down there, Naruto said, the silver light in his eyes pulsing with uncertainty. Something important. Hinata activated her Byakugan again, peering into the underground chamber. I see a small room with what appears to be a pedestal. There's an object on it, a book or tablet of some kind. No traps or guardians that I can detect. The interference in Naruto's perception made it impossible to verify her assessment through omniscience. For the first time since acquiring the eyes, he found himself relying entirely on conventional senses and Hinata's abilities, a disconcerting reversal of their usual dynamic. I'll go first, he decided, creating a small Rasengan to provide illumination as they descended the narrow staircase. The underground chamber proved smaller than expected, perhaps 5 meters square, its walls covered in the same ancient script as above. At its center stood a simple stone pedestal supporting what appeared to be a tablet of polished obsidian, its surface etched with silver inlay that caught the light of Naruto's jutsu. Can you read it? Hinata asked, noting his intense focus on the inscriptions. Not exactly, Naruto admitted. The eyes are showing me fragments of meaning, but the interference is scrambling complete understanding. He stepped closer to the tablet, drawn by an inexplicable familiarity. The silver inlay seemed to respond to his presence, glowing faintly in the dim light. As his fingers hovered near its surface, words formed in his mind, not through omniscience but something more direct, as if the tablet itself communicated. The eyes see all, but vision without purpose is merely observation. The knowing ones created pairs, the eye to perceive, the mirror to reflect, the arbiter to judge. Balance in all things. It's about the eyes, he said aloud, sharing the message with Hinata. And Kagami's mirror. They're connected somehow, created as counterbalances. And the arbiter? Hinata asked. Before Naruto could respond, his omniscient perception suddenly returned in full force. Not gradually but in an overwhelming rush that drove him to his knees. Information flooded his consciousness without filter or structure, thousands of simultaneous insights threatening to drown his individual identity in cosmic awareness. Through the chaos came a single vision of perfect clarity, a being of pure energy descending from the heavens, eyes containing entire galaxies. Reaching toward the previous bearer of omniscience with judgment in its gaze. The divine arbiter, he gasped, struggling to process the vision. It's coming. Not just a myth or metaphor, a real entity that hunts those who carry the eyes. Hinata knelt beside him, steadying him with a gentle touch. When? I don't know exactly. The timeline is fluid. He took a deep breath, gradually regaining control as the initial shock subsided. But every use of the eyes, power accelerates its approach. Kagami was right about that much. As his faculties returned, Naruto studied the tablet more carefully. The eyes now translating its complete message. What he read confirmed his growing suspicions about the nature of his power and the dangers it represented. According to the ancient text, the yes of omniscience were one of 3 divine artifacts created at the world's beginning, tools meant for cosmic entities rather than mortals. When humans acquired these powers, a fundamental imbalance occurred that threatened reality itself. The arbiter existed to correct these imbalances, reclaiming divine tools from mortal hands when their use grew too extensive or reckless. We need to find Shizuka immediately, Naruto said, capturing the tablet's information in memory before backing away from the pedestal. She's been researching these ruins, she must know more about this cosmic triangle of eyes, mirror, and arbiter. They ascended the stairs quickly, emerging into night air that felt cleansing after the ancient chamber's oppressive atmosphere. Stars blazed overhead, their lights seeming to respond to the silver glow of Naruto's eyes, a cosmic recognition that reinforced the tablet's implications about his power's otherworldly origins. We'll head for Kenta Village at first light, Hinata decided practically. If Shizuka's working with local scholars, someone there will know how to find her. As they made their way back to their original campsite, Naruto found himself unusually quiet. Processing the tablet's revelations and their implications. The eyes were not merely a powerful dojutsu but something far more fundamental, a cosmic tool never meant for human possession. Every use drew attention from forces beyond mortal comprehension. Yet relinquishing them seemed impossible now. Even if he wanted to, the eyes had integrated with his being in ways that felt irreversible. More importantly, the knowledge they provided might be essential for protecting those he cared about from the coming judgment. Back at camp, they settled into watch rotations, though neither found sleep easy after their discovery. During his shift, Naruto practiced the focusing techniques that helped manage omniscient input, directing his questions with greater precision than before. Show me Shizuka's connection to the eyes. He thought carefully. The response came as a series of images. Shizuka kneeling before an ancient master, receiving specialized training in recognizing and countering divine artifacts. The same woman, years later. Comforting the previous bearer of the eyes during moments of overwhelming information. Shizuka studying countless ruins similar to those they'd discovered, piecing together the history of cosmic tools in human hands. Show me how to find her quickly, he directed next. This query produced a clear path. Not the route to Kenta Village they'd planned but a more direct approach to a secluded meditation site on Three Wolves Mountain's eastern face. The vision showed Shizuka there now, likely to remain for several days while conducting her research. When Hinata awoke for her watch, Naruto shared this new information. We can save time by heading directly to her meditation site rather than searching through the village. Is it safe? She asked practically. You mentioned collective agents in these mountains. The eyes show the route is relatively clear, he assured her. And speed seems increasingly important given what we've learned. They adjusted their plans accordingly, rising before dawn to begin the journey toward Shizuka's location. The terrain grew increasingly challenging, narrow ridges, unstable scree slopes, and dense thickets that seemed deliberately arranged to discourage casual visitors. By midday, they had reached a series of natural stone steps leading to what appeared to be an abandoned shrine perched precariously on a cliff edge. Athered statues of unknown deities flanked the approach, their features eroded by centuries of mountain storms. "She's here," Naruto confirmed, his omniscient perception detecting a single human presence within the shrine. "Alone, but alert, she's already aware of our approach." As if confirming his assessment, the shrine's wooden door slid open before they reached it. A woman stood silhouetted against interior shadows, tall and straight-backed despite apparent age, her silver-streaked black hair arranged in the complex braid Naruto had seen in his vision. "I've been expecting you, bearer of the eyes," she called, her voice carrying surprising strength. "Though I admit, not quite so soon after your awakening." Naruto and Hinata exchanged glances of surprise before approaching the threshold. Up close, Shizuka proved difficult to age. Her face showed wisdom rather than years, with only faint lines at the corners of keen gray eyes suggesting decades of experience. "You know who I am," Naruto said, not a question but confirmation. Shizuka smiled slightly. "The eyes have returned to the world. Such events create ripples that those who know how to listen can detect." Her gaze shifted to Hinata. "And a Hyuga companion, how appropriate. Lesser eyes walking alongside greater." If Hinata took offense at this characterization, she showed no sign. "We've come seeking your knowledge about the eyes of omniscience and their connection to something called the divine arbiter." The woman's expression grew serious. "Come inside. Such matters shouldn't be discussed where the mountains themselves might listen." The shrine's interior proved unexpectedly comfortable. Simple furnishings arranged around a central hearth where tea already brewed, as if Shizuka had indeed anticipated their exact arrival time. Scrolls and ancient texts covered a low table, some in languages Naruto's omniscience identified as extinct for millennia. "Sit," she instructed, pouring tea with practiced grace. "Drink. It will help clear your perception. Too much knowledge clouds wisdom just as too many stars obscure the shapes of constellations." The tea tasted unusual but pleasant, herbs Naruto couldn't identify even with omniscient knowledge, suggesting origins outside normal botanical categories. As predicted, the constant flow of information seemed to organize itself more coherently after several sips, patterns emerging where chaos had prevailed. "You've found one of the temples," Shizuka observed, studying Naruto with clinical interest. "Read the tablet of balance, I assume, or you wouldn't ask about the arbiter." "Yes," he confirmed. It spoke of 3 cosmic tools: the eyes, the mirror, and the arbiter as judge between them. Shizuka nodded approvingly. A simplified version, but essentially correct. In the beginning, when reality was still forming, certain powers were separated to prevent any single entity from controlling all aspects of existence. The eyes to see all possibilities, the mirror to reflect and sometimes reverse them. The arbiter to maintain balance between knowing and unknowing. These were meant for gods, not humans, Hinata surmised. Precisely. Shizuka sipped her tea thoughtfully. Yet throughout history, mortals have occasionally acquired these powers, always with profound consequences. The eyes grant omniscience but lack the cosmic perspective to apply such knowledge wisely. The mirror reflects omniscience but cannot generate original insight. And the arbiter destroys those who upset the balance, Naruto finished grimly. Not always destroys, Shizuka corrected. Sometimes merely recalibrates, returns things to their proper order. The previous bearer surrendered the eyes voluntarily after understanding their true nature. Others have fought, refusing to relinquish what they considered rightfully theirs. Her gaze sharpened. Which path will you choose, I wonder? The question hung between them, unanswerable in its current form. Naruto hadn't sought the eyes but now carried their responsibility. Surrendering them might prevent cosmic judgment but would also remove a powerful tool for protecting those he cared about. The Void Collective seeks the eyes as well, he said instead of answering directly. What's their role in all this? Shizuka's expression darkened. Fools playing with forces beyond their comprehension. They believe controlling Omniscience science would grant them power over reality itself, a fundamental misunderstanding of cosmic balance. They've hunted each bearer throughout history, always failing yet never learning from failure. And Kagami? Hinata asked. The mirror wielder we encountered. Ah, Shizuka smiled slightly. More interesting by far. Kagami is neither ally nor enemy but something in between, a reflection of omniscience itself. Where the eyes see all possibilities, the mirror shows which ones should never be pursued. A necessary counterbalance. Kagami attacked us, Naruto pointed out. Endangered innocent diplomats. Did they? Shizuka raised an eyebrow. Or did they demonstrate the limitations of your power in the least destructive way possible? Consider carefully what actually occurred versus what might have happened. Naruto fell silent, reconsidering the encounter from this perspective. Kagami had indeed caused property damage but harmed no one, and had demonstrated the vulnerability in his Omniscience that might prove crucial knowledge later. How do I control the eyes better? He asked finally. Sometimes the information is overwhelming, other times frustratingly incomplete. Shizuka studied him with new interest. Most bearers ask how to expand their power, not contain it. Perhaps you're wiser than your predecessors. She set down her teacup decisively. The eyes respond to intention more than technique. You must learn to ask the right questions rather than attempting to know everything simultaneously. I've been working on filtering methods, Naruto explained. Compartmentalizing information until needed. A good start, she approved. But ultimately insufficient. True mastery comes from understanding the eyes' purpose, not merely to see all, but to reveal what matters most in each moment. Omniscience without discernment is merely cosmic noise. For the next several hours, Shizuka shared techniques for refining omniscient perception, methods developed through centuries of studying previous bearers and the consequences of their choices. Some involved meditation practices that helped organize information hierarchically, others focused on linking omniscience with intuition rather than analytical thought. Throughout these lessons, Hinata observed quietly, occasionally asking insightful questions that connected concepts to practical application. Her presence seemed to intrigue Shizuka, who eventually addressed her directly. You ground him, the older woman noted. Provide connection to humanity when omniscience threatens to separate him from it. Previous bearers often lacked such anchors, perhaps why they drifted toward cosmic perspective at the expense of human understanding. Hinata's cheeks colored slightly at the observation. We've been friends for many years. I simply try to help however I can. More than friends, I think, Shizuka said with knowing smile. Though perhaps neither of you has fully acknowledged it yet. The awkward moment was interrupted by a sudden shift in Naruto's perception, a premonition of such intensity that it overwhelmed all other information. He saw void collective agents converging on the shrine, led by someone with specialized tracking abilities that could detect the unique energy signature of the eyes even through concealment techniques. We need to leave, he said urgently, rising to his feet. Collective hunters approaching, at least 8, heavily armed with chakra suppression technology. Shizuka showed no surprise at this announcement. Yes, I've been expecting them as well. Your presence accelerated their timetable. But they've been monitoring my research for months. You knew they would come? Hinata asked, already gathering her equipment. Of course. The collective always seeks those with knowledge of the cosmic tools. Shizuka began calmly collecting her most important scrolls. They've tried to capture me several times over the years. Persistent, if unimaginative, Naruto expanded his omniscient perception. Calculating optimal escape routes. They'll have the main paths covered. We'll need to descend the eastern cliff face, difficult but not impossible with chakra control. And leave tracks for them to follow. Shizuka shook her head. No, better to split up. Create confusion, divide their forces. Meet at the Temple of Echoes near Kenta village tomorrow at midnight. That's too risky, Hinata objected. We came to protect you. Shizuka laughed, the sound surprisingly youthful. Child, I've been evading the collective since before your parents were born. I need no protection. She withdrew a small bamboo container from within her robes. But your concern is admirable. Take this, it contains techniques for stabilizing omniscient perception during combat. Useful if the collective deploys disruptors. Naruto accepted the container, tucking it securely in his pack. The Temple of Echoes. I can see it through the eyes. We'll be there. Good. Now go. Take the hidden path behind the shrine. It connects to a system of caves that will confuse pursuit. Shizuka made shooing motions with her hands. I'll create a diversion to occupy our visitors. Though reluctant to leave her facing multiple opponents alone, Naruto recognized the strategic wisdom of her plan. His omniscient perception confirmed she possessed impressive combat capabilities despite her scholarly appearance, and more importantly, extensive experience evading exactly this type of pursuer. "Be careful," Hinata said as they prepared to depart. "The collective seems increasingly desperate." "Desperation makes them predictable," Shizuka replied confidently. "Now hurry. Time grows short." They slipped through a concealed door at the shrine's rear, finding themselves on a narrow ledge overlooking a sheer drop. Bah! Rely visible path wound downward through tumbled boulders, eventually disappearing into a dark cave mouth partially hidden by scrub vegetation. As they began their descent, Naruto cast one final glance at the shrine above. Through the eyes, he saw Shizuka calmly arranging papers around her central hearth, apparently unconcerned about the approaching threat. Something about her composure suggested this was far from her first encounter with the collective, and that they might well regret finding her. "She'll be fine," Hinata assured him, reading his concern. "We need to focus on reaching the meeting point safely." Naruto nodded, turning his attention to the treacherous path ahead. The cave system Shizuka had mentioned proved extensive and disorienting, branching in multiple directions with occasional false exits designed to confuse pursuers. Using a combination of Hinata's Byakugan to identify structural stability and Naruto's omniscience to trace the original route's intention, they navigated the underground labyrinth efficiently. Occasional sounds echoed from distant passages, suggesting other travelers or possibly pursuit, but they encountered no one directly. By nightfall, they had emerged from the mountains into forested foothills several kilometers from Kenta village. Making camp seemed unnecessarily risky given the collective's presence in the region, so they continued through darkness, relying on their enhanced perceptions to avoid natural hazards. "What do you make of Shizuka?" Hinata asked as they paused briefly beside a stream to refill water containers. Naruto considered the question carefully. "She knows more than she revealed. About the eyes, about me specifically. The eyes show me she's been tracking previous bearers for centuries, which shouldn't be possible for a normal human lifespan." "I noticed that too," Hinata agreed. "Her chakra network shows patterns I've never seen before, almost as if she's neither entirely human nor something else entirely." She frowned thoughtfully. "Do you think we can trust her?" "I think her knowledge is genuine," Naruto replied after a moment. "Whether her agenda aligns completely with ours, that's less clear. But right now, she's our best source of information about controlling the eyes and understanding what we're facing." They continued their journey through the night, skirting the edges of small settlements then passing directly through populated areas. The eyes showed Naruto that Void Collective agents had indeed spread through the region, questioning locals and establishing surveillance at key intersections. By dawn, they had reached the outskirts of Kenta village, a modestly prosperous community known for its hot springs and historical sites. The Temple of Echoes lay approximately 2 kilometers beyond the village proper. Built into a hillside where unique acoustic properties created the phenomenon that gave the shrine its name. "We should avoid the village entirely," Hinata suggested, her Byakugan scanning for potential observers. "Circle around to approach the temple from the forest side." Naruto agreed, his omniscient perception detecting multiple unfamiliar chakra signatures throughout the settlement. Whether collective agents or simply travelers was difficult to determine without closer inspection, but caution seemed prudent given recent events. They found temporary shelter in a dense copse of bamboo beyond farmland. Using the hours until their midnight rendezvous to rest and review what they'd learned. The bamboo container Shizuka had provided contained a single scroll WRITTEN in an ancient script that the eyes translated automatically, detailed instructions for maintaining omniscient perception during combat, particularly when facing technologies designed to disrupt it. These techniques predate modern ninjutsu by centuries, Naruto observed as he studied the scroll. They describe chakra pathways we don't even have names for anymore. Hinata leaned closer to examine the diagrams. Some of these energy centers correspond to points in the Hyuga gentle fist technique, but others, she shook her head in wonder, I've never seen these before, even in our clan's oldest records. As evening approached, Naruto expanded his perception to check Shizuka's status, hoping to confirm she had escaped the collective's pursuit. To his concern, the eyes provided no clear Information. Another frustrating blind spot in Omniscience that suggested either very effective concealment techniques or something interfering with his perception. I can't locate her, he admitted to Hinata. Either she's shielding herself from detection, or something's blocking my perception specifically related to her. All the more reason to proceed carefully, Hinata replied. We'll maintain full alert when approaching the temple. Quote, darkness finally enveloped the landscape, providing natural concealment for their movement toward the rendezvous point. The Temple of Echoes emerged from 4 faint shadows as they approached, an elegant structure of weathered stone and dark wood built in a style that predated the founding of the ninja villages. Naruto's omniscient perception detected no presence within the temple, which could indicate either an empty building or exceptional concealment. Hinata's Byakugan provided similar uncertainty. The temple's walls incorporated materials that partially blocked her visual technique, creating blind spots in her perception. This feels like a test, she murmured as they paused at the edge of the clearing surrounding the temple. To see how we approach uncertainty. Naruto nodded, appreciating her insight. Shizuka's lessons had emphasized discernment rather than complete knowledge. Perhaps this situation deliberately presented limitations to reinforce that principle. We proceed openly but cautiously, he decided. No stealth, but ready to respond if necessary. They crossed the clearing directly, making no attempt to conceal their approach. The temple entrance stood open, interior illuminated by soft lantern light that created moving shadows against ancient walls. As they stepped across the threshold, the building's acoustic properties became immediately apparent, their footsteps creating musical tones that resonated throughout the structure. Welcome, Shizuka's voice echoed from everywhere and nowhere simultaneously. You found your way. Good. She materialized from shadows at the temple's center, appearing unharmed and completely composed despite the pursuit they'd left her facing. Her silver streak braid had been rearranged into a more practical configuration, and she'd exchanged scholarly robes for practical traveling attire. You escaped the collective, Naruto observed, relief evident in his voice. Shizuka smiled slightly. They found exactly what I wanted them to find. An elaborate setup of false research and misleading artifacts that should keep them occupied for weeks deciphering nonsense. Clever, Hinata approved, but they'll eventually realize the deception. By which time we'll be long gone. Shizuka gestured toward a side chamber. Come, there's someone you should meet. Someone with personal experience of the burden you now carry, Naruto. They followed her through a narrow doorway into a small meditation room where a single figure knelt before a shrine containing no deity but rather a simple ceramic bowl filled with clear water. As they entered, the figure turned, revealing a woman perhaps 40 years old with striking features and eyes that, while not silver like Naruto's, held unusual depth and awareness. This is Rei, Shizuka introduced. She carried the eyes of Omniscience briefly, approximately 15 years ago. Naruto stared in shock, the eyes providing no foreknowledge of this encounter. But I thought, the tablet suggested previous bearers were destroyed by the Arbiter. Not all, Rei said, her voice calm and measured. Some of us found alternative paths. She rose gracefully, approaching Naruto with undisguised curiosity. Though her eyes appeared normal, something in her gaze suggested remnants of the power she'd once possessed, echoes of omniscience that had permanently altered her perception. You're adapting remarkably well for someone so newly awakened, she observed. Most struggle much longer with the initial flood. I've had help, Naruto replied, glancing toward Hinata. And plenty of motivation to master it quickly. Rei smiled, the expression warming features that initially appeared severe. Connection to others makes all the difference. I lacked had during my time with the eyes, perhaps why my experience proved more challenging. Rei has agreed to share her experiences, Shizuka explained, particularly regarding interaction with the Arbiter. Such first-hand knowledge may prove invaluable as your own confrontation approaches. The implication that such confrontation was inevitable rather than merely possible sent a chill through Naruto. His omniscient perception had shown the Arbiter as a distant threat, powerful but not imminent. Rei's presence suggested the timeline might be accelerating. How did you survive? He asked directly. If the Arbiter came for you. Rei exchanged glances with Shizuka before responding. Through surrender rather than resistance. When I understood what the eyes truly were, tools meant for cosmic entities rather than humans, I chose to relinquish them voluntarily. You gave them up. Naruto couldn't keep surprise from his voice. After experiencing omniscience, the thought of returning to normal perception seemed almost inconceivable. Not entirely by choice, Ray admitted. The Arbiter approached after I'd carried the eyes for approximately 3 months. It offered judgment. Surrender the power willingly and live, or resist and be destroyed along with anyone who stood beside me. The stark choice hung in the air between them. Naruto's mind filled with images of Konoha, of friends and comrades, who would undoubtedly stand with him if such confrontation came. The eyes showed him countless potential outcomes of such resistance, few ending without devastating losses. The Arbiter takes different forms for each bearer, Ray continued, manifesting according to their deepest beliefs about cosmic justice. For me, it appeared as a being of pure light with innumerable wings and eyes. For others throughout history, it has appeared as ancient gods, natural forces, or abstract concepts given form. How does one surrender omniscience? Hinata asked practically. The eyes seem integrated with Naruto now. Not something he could simply remove like ordinary tools. That's the paradox, Shizuka interjected. The eyes cannot be surrendered until the Arbiter appears to reclaim them. Yet using them extensively hastens that appearance and potentially strengthens the judgment rendered. A cosmic catch-22, Naruto murmured. Use the power and risk destruction, or limit its use and potentially miss crucial information needed for protection. Ray nodded solemnly. You understand the dilemma perfectly. It's why most bearers eventually face conflict with the Arbiter. They convince themselves hat continued use is necessary for some greater purpose, not realizing that cosmic balance cares nothing for human intentions, only equilibrium. The conversation continued late into the night, Ray airing details of her experiences with the eyes, techniques for managing information overload, methods for distinguishing between probable and merely possible futures, ways to recognize when omniscience itself might be misleading due to cosmic interference. Throughout their discussion, Naruto found himself studying both women with increasing curiosity. Ray's timeline suggested she'd acquired and rendered the eyes long before his discovery of the ruins, raising questions about the power's path between bearers. Shizuka's extensive knowledge implied connections to this cosmic cycle that transcended ordinary human lifespans. There's something you're not telling me, he said finally, interrupting a technical explanation of perception filtering. Something about how the eyes move between bearers. About your own roles in this process. The two women exchanged glances again, a silent communication that confirmed his suspicion. Shizuka sighed, setting aside the scroll she'd been consulting. Perceptive, she acknowledged. Yes, there are aspects we've withheld, not from malice but from necessity. Some knowledge becomes dangerous when acquired too quickly. I think I've demonstrated ability to handle dangerous knowledge. Naruto countered. Omniscience isn't exactly a gentle gift. Ray's expression softened. It's not about your capability but about timing. Certain revelations would influence your choices in ways that might prove counterproductive. Before Naruto could press further, his omniscient perception flared with urgent warning, multiple presences approaching the temple with coordinated precision. Not random collective hunters but an elite strike team, including specialists with equipment specifically designed to capture bearers of the eyes. We have company, he announced, rising smoothly to his feet. Void Collective. At least 12 operatives, approaching from multiple directions. They've surrounded the temple. Shizuka showed no surprise at this development. Sooner than expected. They must have realized my deception more quickly than anticipated. Or they were tracking us all along, Hinata suggested, activating her Byakugan to confirm Naruto's assessment. I count 14 chakra signatures establishing a perimeter. Professionally coordinated formation. Ray moved to a side wall, pressing a concealed mechanism that revealed hidden weapons, a sort of unusual design and several small devices Naruto's omniscience identified as chakra disruptors similar to those the collective themselves employed. There's an escape tunnel beneath the meditation chamber, she said, distributing the devices among them. Designed specifically for situations like this. It emerges approximately 1 kilometer east, within a waterfall grotto that masks chakra signatures. They'll have anticipated standard escape routes, Naruto pointed out, the eyes showing him the collective's thorough preparation. Including hidden tunnels. Perhaps, Shizuka conceded, but they don't know about this one. It was created by a previous bearer and concealed through means beyond conventional detection. Before they could move toward this escape route, Naruto's perception registered a new presence joining the collective forces, a signature he recognized immediately despite having encountered it only once before. "Kagami is with them," he said, surprise evident in his voice. Quote, "The mirror wielder has joined the collective's operation." This development clearly unsettled both Shizuka and Rei, their confident expressions faltering momentarily. "That changes our calculation," Shizuka said grimly. "The mirror can track the eyes across dimensions if in close proximity. Escape becomes significantly more challenging. Then we fight," Naruto decided, the silver light in his eyes intensifying with resolve. "Create an opening and break through their line at its weakest point." Hinata moved to his side automatically, their years of training together creating seamless tactical understanding. "The northern approach has the fewest operatives," she noted, "and the terrain favors our abilities over theirs." Rei tested her sword's balance with practiced ease. Fighting the collective directly plays to their strengths. They've studied the eyes for centuries, developed countermeasures for omniscient perception. Which is why they won't expect direct confrontation, Naruto countered. "The eyes show me they anticipate subterfuge, not open assault." A familiar analytical clarity had settled over him, the same focused state he'd entered when protecting the lightning daimyo. Eyes showed him multiple potential attack vectors, calculating success probabilities for each based on known collective capabilities and terrain advantages. "Hinata and I will create the primary diversion," he continued, outlining the strategy forming in his mind. "Draw their attention frontally while you two circle behind using the tunnel. When they commit resources to our position, strike from behind and create confusion in their ranks." Shizuka studied him with newfound respect. "A solid strategy, assuming precise timing. Which Omniscience provides," Naruto finished with confidence. "I'll know exactly when they've committed to the frontal engagement." The plan set, they moved quickly to implement it. Rei and Shizuka disappeared into the hidden tunnel while Naruto and Hinata prepared for their diversionary assault. Through the eyes, Naruto tracked the collective's deployment, specialized units moving into capture formation, equipment designed to neutralize dojutsu abilities being prepared. Kagami hanging back as tactical advisor rather than direct combatant. "Ready?" he asked Hinata, who had assumed her gentle fist stance beside him. She nodded, pale eyes reflecting moonlight that filtered through temple windows. "Always." They burst through the main entrance in perfect synchronization, Naruto's omniscient perception guiding their movement directly toward the weakest section of the collective's perimeter. As predicted, their direct approach caused momentary confusion among operatives who had prepared for stealth and evasion rather than frontal assault. Naruto channeled chakra into a technique he'd developed specifically for combat applications of omniscience, a variant of his signature shadow clones, but with each duplicate possessing fragmented omniscient perception focused on a single opponent. Multi-perception clone jutsu, he called, creating 8 duplicates that immediately engaged individual collective operatives with uncanny precision, each clone anticipating its opponent's movements before they occurred. Simultaneously, Hinata executed a protection technique around herself and the real Naruto, her Byakugan allowing her to target approaching projectiles with pinpoint accuracy. Together they advanced through the initial defensive line, creating exactly the distraction their strategy required. Through his omniscient perception, Naruto tracked Rei and Shizuka emerging from the tunnel behind collective lines. The timing was perfect. Most operatives had turned their attention toward the frontal assault, leaving their rear vulnerable to surprise attack. The battle escalated quickly, collective agents deploying increasingly sophisticated technology as they realized their quarry wouldn't be easily captured. Disruptor fields designed to interfere with dojutsu abilities created localized areas where Naruto's omniscience flickered unpredictably, forcing him to rely on combat instincts rather than perfect foresight. Hinata compensated seamlessly for these limitations, her Byakugan less affected by the disruption technology. They moved as a coordinated unit, each covering the other's vulnerabilities while steadily advancing toward the perimeter's edge. From the corner of his eye, Naruto glimpsed Shizuka engaging 3 collective operatives simultaneously, her fighting style unlike any he'd seen before, movements that seemed to bend space itself. Attacks that landed before they appeared to begin. Rei fought with similar impossible grace, her sword tracing patterns that confused perception even without omniscient sight. The collective's foe, Armation, began to fragment under this four-pronged assault, operatives falling back to secondary positions as their carefully planned capture operation dissolved into chaotic individual engagements. CTORY seemed increasingly possible, until Kagami finally entered the fray. The mirror wielder stepped forward from shadows, reflective surface raised toward the battling groups. Moonlight caught its polished face, transforming into something more substantial than mere illumination, a pulse of energy that rippled across the battlefield, disrupting all techniques momentarily. In that instant of universal vulnerability, Kagami spoke a single word in a language Naruto's omniscience couldn't translate, a sound that seemed to vibrate at the molecular level, creating a brief distortion in physical space. Reality itself seemed to hiccup, perspectives shifting as though the world had been momentarily reflected and then restored slightly out of alignment. When normal perception returned, the battlefield had changed fundamentally. Collective operatives now stood in a protective formation around Shizuka and Rei, while Naruto and Hinata found themselves isolated at the forest's edge. What just happened? Hinata whispered, disoriented by the sudden reversal. Naruto's omniscience struggled to process the event, showing only fragmented information about spatial manipulation beyond conventional dimensional understanding. Kagami's mirror, it doesn't just reflect abilities, it can temporarily reflect reality itself. Across the clearing, Kagami approached the captured women with casual confidence. Even at this distance, Naruto could see the mirror wielder's expression, not triumph but something more complex, almost apologetic. The vessel performs admirably, Kagami called, voice carrying unnaturally across the distance. But understanding remains incomplete. Some battles cannot be won through direct confrontation. Naruto prepared to re-engage, calculating a new approach that might overcome the mirror's capabilities. But Shizuka's voice stopped him. Stand down, Naruto, she called firmly. This isn't your fight. Take what you've learned and continue your journey. We'll find our own path forward. The instruction confused him. The eyes showed multiple rescue scenarios with reasonable success probabilities. Why would she discourage attempt? Rei met his gaze across the distance, her expression conveying meaning beyond words. The knowledge seeker must sometimes accept that not all wisdom comes through victory, she called. Some lessons require surrender to understand. Before Naruto could respond, Kagami raised the mirror again. This time, instead of reflecting reality, it seemed to fold space around the collective group, creating a visual distortion that gradually enveloped them all. Within seconds, they had vanished completely, leaving only disturbed earth and scattered equipment as evidence of the confrontation. We can track them, Hinata said immediately, her Byakugan scanning for traces. That technique must have left some kind of trail. But Naruto's omniscient perception showed nothing, another frustrating blind spot in supposedly all-encompassing knowledge. Wait, Veer method Kagami had used for transportation existed beyond conventional dimensional understanding, rendering it invisible even to the eyes. They're gone, he acknowledged, frustration evident in his voice. And I think they allowed themselves to be captured. Hinata turned to him in surprise. Why would they do that? I don't know. Naruto stared at the empty space where their allies had stood moments before. But both of them seemed prepared for this outcome, almost as if it was part of some larger plan we aren't privy to. They searched the temple thoroughly, hoping to find CLUES about Shizuka and Rei's intentions or possible predetermined rendezvous points. The hidden chamber yielded some useful materials, scrolls containing additional techniques for managing omniscient perception, historical records of previous bearers, and most significantly, a map marked with locations of other temples similar to the one where Naruto had discovered the eyes. They left these deliberately, Hinata observed as they gathered the materials. Information they wanted us to have regardless of the battle's outcome. Naruto nodded, his mind processing multiple implications simultaneously. They're guiding us along a specific path, teaching through experience rather than direct instruction. But to what end? Hinata wondered. What's their ultimate goal? That question remained unanswered as they departed the temple before dawn, traveling south to avoid potential collective reinforcements. The eyes showed Naruto that their unexpected resistance had disrupted the organization's Ional operations significantly, Forces were being redirected, command structures reorganized, new strategies formulated. For the moment, at least, pursuit would be minimal while the collective focused on their captured prizes. Whether Shizuka and Rei would prove as valuable as anticipated remained to be seen. As morning light filtered through forest canopy, Naruto found himself reflecting on the knee. Gait's events and the larger pattern emerging around the eyes of Omniscience. Every encounter, every revelation seemed carefully orchestrated, pieces in a cosmic game whose rules remained frustratingly opaque despite supposedly all-seeing perception. We need to return to Konoha, he decided as they paused to rest briefly. Report what we've learned, study these materials more thoroughly. Hinata agreed, though her expression suggested lingering concern about their abandoned allies. And then, Naruto gazed toward the horizon, the silver light in his eyes reflecting dawn's golden glow. Then we follow the map. Find the other temples, learn what the eyes are truly meant for, and what role I'm supposed to play in this cosmic drama. The path ahead remained uncertain despite omniscient perception. The eyes could show countless possible futures but not which would ultimately manifest. That would depend on choices yet unmade, his own and others. For now, the journey continued, one step at a time. Me toward understanding that transcended mere knowledge. Chapter 2 End. Chapter 3. The Knowledge Seeker. The Hokage's office was silent as Naruto concluded his report, the only sound the gentle patter of summer rain against windows. Konohamaru leaned back in his chair, face unreadable as he processed the implications of what he'd just heard. Beside him, Shikamaru's characteristic expression of lazy disinterest had given way to genuine concern, brow furrowed in deep thought. Let me make sure I understand, Konohamaru said finally. These eyes aren't just a powerful dojutsu but actual divine artifacts never meant for humans. Using them draws the attention of some cosmic entity called the Arbiter that destroys those who upset the balance. And now two people who might have helped you understand this power better have been captured by the same organization hunting you. That about covers it, Naruto confirmed, standing formally before the desk with Hinata at his side. Their journey back to Konoha had been swift but uneventful, giving them time to organize their findings into a coherent briefing. Troublesome doesn't begin to describe this, Shikamaru muttered, tapping his fingers rhythmically against the desk. We're dealing with forces outside normal strategic parameters. Konohamaru rose, moving to the window to watch rain streak down glass. At 21, the young Hokage carried responsibilities that had aged him beyond his years, though moments of his former exuberance occasionally surfaced. This was not one of those moments. What's your assessment of immediate threats? He asked without turning. The Void Collective remains active but currently focused on their captives, Naruto reported. My omniscient perception shows their operations disrupted for at least the next 2 weeks while they reorganize. Kagami is a wild card, potentially more dangerous than the collective but with unclear motives. The Arbiter, he hesitated, remains a distant but inevitable threat. And these temples marked on the map. Konohamaru gestured toward the ancient parchment spread across his desk. You believe they contain information crucial to understanding the eyes? Yes. ACH appears connected to a different aspect of the power, perception, application, limitation. Together, they might provide context the eyes themselves can't supply. Konohamaru returned to his desk, studying the map thoughtfully. 5 locations were marked with distinctive symbols, one near where Naruto had found the eyes, another in the Land of Iron where they'd encountered Shizuka, and 3 others scattered across distant territories. This presents a significant diplomatic challenge, the Hokage noted. These temples are located in Wind Country, Water Country, and what appears to be unclaimed territory in the far north. Sending you to investigate means potentially alerting other nations to the nature of your abilities. Which they'll discover eventually regardless, Shikamaru pointed out pragmatically. The Lightning Daimyo has already seen a demonstration. Word spreads, especially about power this significant. Hinata, who had remained silent throughout the report, finally spoke. There's another consideration. The scrolls we recovered suggest limiting use of the eyes delays the Arbiter's appearance. Extended missions outside the village might reduce the need for Naruto to rely on Omniscience for Konoha's protection. Konohamaru nodded slowly, recognizing the logic. A calculated risk, removing a powerful asset from the village while potentially preserving it long-term. I don't like being discussed as an asset, Naruto said quietly, the silver light in his eyes pulsing slightly. But Hinata's right. The less I use the eyes, especially for significant applications, he longer before this arbiter decides of upset the cosmic balance. A heavy silence fell as each contemplated the implications. Naruto's omniscient perception showed him each mind working through scenarios, calculating probabilities, weighing options against risks. Despite supposedly seeing all, he found the final decisions impossible to predict with certainty, another limitation of knowledge without complete understanding. Very well, Konohamaru decided finally. I'm authorizing a continued investigation mission. You'll visit these temple sites in sequence, gathering whatever information EY contain about the eyes and potential countermeasures against both the collective and the arbiter. We'll need a cover story, Shikamaru added. Something plausible to explain your presence in our nations without revealing the true purpose. Diplomatic outreach, Hinata suggested. Following up on the Lightning Daimyo's interest in cooperation. It would provide legitimate reason to travel widely. Konohamaru considered this, then nodded approval. Good. We'll prepare appropriate credentials. Naruto will serve as special envoy, with Hinata as clan representative supporting diplomatic initiatives. The practicalities were quickly arranged. Travel authorizations, supply requisitions, communication protocols. Throughout the planning, Naruto found his attention divided between the immediate conversation and the constant background flow of omniscient information that he'd learned to filter but never fully silence. As the meeting concluded, Konohamaru held Naruto back briefly while Hinata and Shikamaru departed to make preparations. There's a personal dimension to this I haven't addressed, the young Hokage said once they were alone. How are you handling this burden? The question caught Naruto off guard. Most interactions since his transformation had focused on practical applications or strategic implications rather than personal impact. It's challenging, he admitted, all owing his formal posture to relax slightly. Knowing so much but understanding so little. Seeing connections everywhere but not always their significance. Sometimes I feel more observer than participant in my own life. Konohamaru nodded sympathetically. I can't pretend to understand completely, but I know something about living up to expectations. The Sarutobi name carried its own burden. He smiled slightly. You taught me once that strength comes from protecting what matters, not from power itself. Don't forget your own wisdom. The reminder brought an answering smile to Naruto's face. I'll try to remember that. One more thing, Konohamaru added as Naruto turned to leave. About Hinata. What about her? Naruto asked, though the eyes already showed him the likely direction of this conversation. I've seen how she grounds you, brings you back when omniscience threatens to pull you away from humanity. The young Hokage's expression grew serious. Don't take that connection for granted. In all this cosmic drama, sometimes the most important things are also the simplest. Naruto nodded, acknowledging the advice without further comment. As he left the Hokage Tower, rain had then way to late afternoon sunlight that transformed lingering droplets into prismatic brilliance. Through the eyes, each reflected spectrum contained universes of color beyond normal human perception. Beautiful but overwhelming in its detail. He found Hinata waiting outside, conversing quietly with Shikamaru about logistical details for their journey. She looked up as he approached, a question in her pale eyes that required no words. It's approved, he confirmed. We leave tomorrow for Wind Country, the closest temple site. Shikamaru nodded, satisfaction evident beneath his usual lazy demeanor. I'll finalize the diplomatic cover story. The Wind Daimyo has been seeking closer ties since the war. This provides perfect opportunity for substantive discussion. As the strategist departed to complete arrangements, Naruto and Hinata found themselves alone on the rain-washed street. Around them, village life continued its normal rhythm. Shopkeepers sweeping puddles from storefronts, children splashing through remaining pools. Shinobi resuming patrols interrupted by the downpour. Should we prepare right away? Hinata asked, practical as always. Naruto hesitated, the eyes showing him countless possible uses for their remaining hours in Konoha, most involving immediate mission preparation. Yet something in him resisted the efficient option. yearning instead for normalcy that had become increasingly rare since his transformation. Actually, he said, making a decision that surprised even himself, I was thinking we could get dinner first. At Ichiraku's. Like old times. Hinata's expression softened, understanding the significance of this choice. I'd like that very much. The walk to the ramen shop felt like crossing a boundary between worlds, leaving behind cosmic concerns and international politics for something simpler. More fundamentally human. The evening air carried the scent of approaching autumn, a subtle shift that the eyes detected at molecular level but that Naruto appreciated more for its nostalgic quality. Tsuki greeted them with characteristic enthusiasm, his weathered face lighting up at the sight of his favorite customer. If he noticed Naruto's transformed eyes, he made no mention of it, treating him with the same boisterous affection as always. The usual for both of you? He asked, already reaching for ingredients. Please, Naruto confirmed, settling on to a familiar stool with Hinata beside him. As they waited for their order, conversation flowed naturally between them, not about missions or cosmic entities but about friends, memories, the small Chan. Jess in the village that marked the passage of time. For perhaps the first hour since acquiring the eyes, Naruto found himself using them minimally, choosing instead to experience the moment directly after than through omniscient filtration. You seem more relaxed, Hinata observed as they finished their meal. More present, Naruto nodded, realizing the truth in her words. I've been so focused on what the eyes show me that I've neglected what's right in front of me. Sometimes knowing less means experiencing more. Her smile carried warmth that required no special perception to appreciate. Hat sounds like wisdom rather than mere knowledge. The distinction lingered in his mind as they walked through evening quiet streets, taking the long route back toward residential districts. Tomorrow would bring resumption of their cosmic quest, but tonight belonged to simpler truths. The comfort of familiar surroundings, the company of someone who saw him clearly despite his transformation. Naruto-kun, Hinata said softly as they paused on the bridge where they'd spoken after his return from the Land of Iron. Whatever we discover in these temples, whatever the eyes reveal, remember that Hoyuar matters more than what you can see. The words echoed Konohamaru's advice so perfectly that Naruto wondered briefly if they'd coordinated their counsel. The eyes immediately showed him this wasn't the case, merely two people who cared about him recognizing the same fundamental truth. I'll remember, he promised, the silver light in his eyes reflecting gently in the water below. After all, I have you to remind me. Their gazes held for a moment that contained unspoken significance, a potential turning point the eyes revealed in branching timelines extending from this exact moment. Possibilities where distance maintained between them, others where something more than friendship finally acknowledged. Before either could speak further, Naruto's omniscient perception flared with warning. A familiar chakra signature approaching rapidly, urgency evident in its pattern. Moments later, an Anbu operative materialized beside them in a swirl of leaves. Uzumaki Naruto, Hyuga Hinata, the masked figure addressed them formally. Your presence is requested immediately at the Intelligence Division. There's been a development regarding the Void Collective. The moment broken, they exchange glances of mutual resignation before following the messenger. Whatever personal revelations might have occurred would have to wait. Cosmic chess pieces were moving again, demanding their attention. The Intelligence Division operated from a nondescript building near the village center, deliberately unremarkable from outside while housing Konoha's most sensitive information processing operations within. As they were escorted through security checkpoints, Naruto's omniscient perception revealed the true complexity beneath mundane appearances, layers of protection jutsu, surveillance systems, and contingency measures that would activate instantly if unauthorized access was attempted. Ibiki Morino awaited them in a conference room dominated by a large table covered with documents and mapping equipment. Despite his advancing years, the scarred interrogation specialist remained an imposing figure, his stern expression revealing nothing of his thoughts even to omniscient perception. Weave in. Intercepted communications indicating significant Void Collective movement toward Fire Country borders, he reported without preamble. Multiple teams converging from different directions, using advanced concealment techniques that nearly escaped our detection networks. How many? Naruto asked, already scanning the tactical displays laid out on the table. At least 30 operatives that we've confirmed, Ibiki replied. Possibly more using methods we can't track. They're moving with purpose, coordinated approach patterns suggesting a specific objective rather than general infiltration. Hinata activated her Byakugan, studying the map markers that indicated confirmed sightings. They're establishing a perimeter, she observed. Not approaching Konoha directly but positioning to intercept something, or someone. Us, Naruto concluded grimly. They know we're planning to visit the temples. They're positioning to capture us en route. Ibiki nodded confirmation. Our analysis reached the same conclusion. The pattern suggests ambush rather than direct assault. They're covering all major routes from Konoha toward Wind Country borders. The intelligence specialist gestured toward a separate section of the table where photographs and documents had been arranged in precise order. More concerning is what we've learned about their leadership structure. The operative designated, Shatter, has taken direct control of this operation, their most elite capture specialist with a perfect success record. Naruto studied the sparse information available on this new threat, fragmentary descriptions. Partial glimpses captured by surveillance, psychological assessment built from observed tactics. The eyes filled in missing details automatically, showing him a tall figure with mechanical augmentations. Specialized training in neutralizing dojutsu users, and a methodical approach to operations that left nothing to chance. They're serious this time, he murmured. No more testing our capabilities or sending standard teams. This is their elite response. Which means they know about tomorrow's departure, Hinata added, concern evident in her voice. We have a security breach somewhere. Ibiki's expression darkened further. We've initiated counterintelligence protocols. In the meantime, Hokage-sama has authorized a change in plans. Your departure will be immediately rather than tomorrow morning, using a diversionary strategy to bypass their perimeter. The revised plan unfolded with typical Konoha efficiency, shadow teams deployed as decoys moving along expected routes, while Naruto and Hinata would depart via an unconventional aerial approach using summoned transportation. The collective's perimeter, designed to intercept ground movement, would be bypassed entirely by traveling above their surveillance network. The diplomatic cover remains in place, Ibiki concluded as they reviewed final details. Official announcement will indicate your departure tomorrow as planned, aiming the deception while you're already well beyond their interception range. As they departed the intelligence division to prepare for immediate deployment, Naruto found himself troubled by implications beyond tactical concerns. The collective's response suggested resources and determination beyond what they'd previously demonstrated, escalation that indicated the significance they placed on acquiring the eyes. They're getting desperate, he said as they hurried through darkened streets toward their respective residences to gather essential supplies. Committing this level of resources, skiing open operation in Fire Country territory. They must believe time is running short, Hinata agreed. But why? What deadline are they facing? The question lingered unanswered as they completed hasty preparations, meeting at a secure location outside the village proper where the summoning would attract minimal attention. Under star-filled sky, Naruto performed the hand signs that had become second nature over years of practice. Summoning jutsu. Chakra flared in elaborate patterns, creating the dimensional gateway that manifested as a massive cloud of smoke. As it cleared, Gamakichi paired, no longer the small toad of Naruto's youth but an enormous battle-ready ally nearly the size of his father Gamabunta. Naruto, the giant toad greeted jovially. Been a while since you called. And with such interesting new eyes too. He peered down with evident curiosity at the silver orbs that had replaced Naruto's former blue ones. Dad mentioned something about cosmic shifts in the summon realm. Guess you're the cause, huh? Something like that, Naruto acknowledged with a wry smile. We need fast transport to Wind Country borders, highest elevation possible to avoid detection from ground-based observers. Gamakichi's enormous head bobbed in understanding. Stealth hop across national borders. No problem. Climb aboard. I'll have you there before sunrise. They secured themselves on the giant toad's back, chakra adhering to prevent falls during the enormous leaps that characterized toad transportation. With a powerful gathering of muscle beneath them, Gamakichi launched skyward, clearing Konoha's surrounding forest in a single bound that carried them hundreds of meters into the night air. The journey proceeded in a series of massive arcs, rising to nearly cloud level before descending to touch briefly on mountaintops or forest canopies, then launching upward again. Each leap covered kilometers of distance, wind rushing past as stars wheeled overhead in dizzying display. Between jumps, Gamakichi maintained a running commentary on summon realm politics, apparently untroubled by the exertion of carrying two humans across vast distances. His casual chatter provided welcome distraction from weightier concerns, reminding Naruto of simpler times when missions involved straightforward objectives rather than cosmic implications. Somewhere near the border between fire and river countries, during a brief rest while Gamakichi oriented himself, Hinata moved closer to Naruto along the toad's broad back. About earlier, she began hesitantly. On the bridge, Naruto nodded, understanding immediately what she referred to. The eyes showed him multiple ways this conversation might unfold, branching possibilities from this exact moment. For once, he chose not to examine them closely, preferring to experience the exchange naturally rather than through predictive lens. "I've been thinking," he said before she could continue, "about what matters most, what I'd regret not saying if something happened during this mission." Hinata's eyes widened slightly, moonlight illuminating her features with silvery glow that complemented the luminescence of his transformed gaze. "We've been friends for so long," Naruto continued, finding words despite the sudden dryness in his throat. "Partners, teammates, confidants. But it's more than that. Has been for a while now. I just never found the right moment to acknowledge it. And now," she asked softly, "now I can see 1,000 possible futures," he admitted with a small smile. "And in the best of them, we stop pretending we're just friends." The confession hung between them, simple words carrying weight accumulated through years of unspoken understanding. Hinata's expression remained unreadable for a moment that stretched into eternity for someone capable of perceiving microseconds. Then she smiled, radiant and certain in ways that required no omniscience to appreciate. "I've waited years to hear you say that," she said, voice steady despite the emotion evident in her eyes. "Not because I needed the words, but because I wanted you to reach that understanding yourself." Naruto reached for her hand, finding it already extended toward his, a synchronicity born of deep connection rather than predictive ability. Their fingers interlaced naturally, contact conveying more than elaborate declarations ever could. "Lo, Oak's like I'm the last one to know something obvious to everyone else," he said ruefully. "Not the last," she corrected gently. "Just arriving at your own pace. Some revelations can't be rushed." Our conversation was interrupted by Gamakichi's rumbling voice from beneath them. "If you two are finished with the romantic interlude, I've got our bearing. Wind country borders just beyond that mountain range. Ready for the final hop." They exchanged glances of shared amusement at the toad's timing before confirming readiness to continue. As Gamakichi gathered himself for another massive leap, Naruto found himself experiencing a curious sensation, a lightness that had nothing to do with physical elevation and everything to do with barriers finally overcome. The eyes showed him potential challenges still ahead, cosmic threats looming on distant horizons, but for this moment, personal truth mattered more than universal knowledge. Some discoveries couldn't be granted through omniscience but had to be lived to be understood. Dawn painted the desert landscape in watercolor hues, pale gold sand against lavender sky, shadows stretching long across dunes that undulated to horizons in all directions. Gamakichi had deposited them precisely at the fire-wind border before returning to the Summon Realm, leaving them to continue their journey through territory where giant toads would attract unwanted attention. "The temple should be approximately 60 kilometers southwest," Naruto said, consulting both the ancient map and his omniscient perception. 2 days travel at normal pace through this terrain. Hinata nodded, adjusting her pack more comfortably. Years of training with her father had included desert survival techniques, knowledge that would prove valuable as they traversed Wind Country's harsh environment. She had already adopted appropriate posture for sand movement, distributing weight to prevent sinking while conserving energy. "We should travel during cooler hours," she suggested. "Early morning and evening, sheltering during midday heat." They set off across the dunes, establishing a sustainable rhythm that balanced speed with endurance. Unlike Fire Country's varied topography, the desert presented a deceptive uniformity that challenged navigation, identical seeming sand formations that shifted constantly under wind's persistent sculpture. For someone with normal perception, maintaining direction would have required constant compass reference and landmark triangulation. Naruto's omniscience rendered such methods unnecessary. He could perceive their exact position on relative to destination with perfect accuracy, adjusting course automatically to accommodate terrain variations. By mid-morning, heat had intensified to uncomfortable levels despite their desert-appropriate attire. Hinata spotted a promising location for temporary shelter, a cluster of weather-worn rock formations creating natural shade against the climbing sun. Perfect timing, Naruto approved. As they settled into the relative cool of stone shadow. According to the eyes, we've covered almost a third of the distance already. They shared water and travel rations conservatively, mindful of limited supplies in the unforgiving environment. As they rested, Naruto expanded his omniscient perception outward, scanning surrounding desert for potential threats or useful information. The eyes revealed little immediate concern. Scattered desert fauna going about survival routines, a trading caravan moving along established routes several kilometers north, weather patterns suggesting continued clear skies for their journey. More distant perception showed Wind Country's hidden village, Sunagaker, bustling with activity despite the harsh climate, its inhabitants adapted to conditions outsiders found challenging. We're being followed, Hinata said suddenly, her Byakugan activated and focused behind them. Single tracker, approximately 5 kilometers back, moving parallel to our path rather than directly on it. Naruto shifted his perception in the indicated direction, immediately detecting the presence she'd identified, a figure moving with practiced efficiency across dunes, using tracking techniques that minimized visible disturbance of sand surfaces. Not collective, he determined after studying the tracker's movement patterns and equipment. Different methodology entirely. Is as someone trained specifically for desert operations. Suna Shinobi, Hinata suggested. Possibly. Naruto frowned slightly as the eyes provided additional context. More likely independent opera. Someone who noticed our arrival and decided to investigate unusual travelers. Threat assessment. Minimal for now. They're maintaining distance, just observing. He continued monitoring the TRACKER while they completed their rest period. We should proceed normally, show them we're traveling openly rather than attempting to hide our presence. When they resumed their journey, they made no attempt to conceal their path or lose their observer. Instead, they maintained steady progress toward their destination, behavior consistent with legitimate travelers rather than infiltrators. By evening, the tracker remained constant in their parallel course, neither approaching nor withdrawing. As twilight transformed the desert into a realm of deepening purple shadows, they established camp in lee of a large dune, position visible enough to demonstrate peaceful intentions while defensible if necessary. They're setting up observation post, Naruto reported, perception focused on their distant shadow. Settling in for overnight surveillance. Hinata nodded, completing the camp arrangement with practiced efficiency. We could approach them directly, clarify our purposes. Let's wait until morning, Naruto decided. Give them time to report to whoever they're working for. By dawn, we should know whether they're simply cautious or actively hostile. As night fully claimed the desert, temperatures dropped dramatically, another survival challenge in the extreme environment. They shared body heat beneath insulated blankets, the practical necessity of desert survival creating natural opportunity for closeness neither found unwelcome after their earlier conversation. Do you see them? Hinata asked quietly as they lay watching stars emerge in astonishing profusion above the desert. The tracker. Yes, they're still. No, she interrupted gently. The stars. Do you see them differently now, with the eyes? The question gave him pause. He'd been so focused on tactical applications of omniscience that aesthetic dimensions had received little conscious attention. I see everything about them, he said slowly. Their composition, distance, the precise wavelengths of light reaching us. The complex interactions of cosmic forces that created each one. I know their names in languages that haven't been spoken for millennia, understand their significance in navigation systems from civilizations long vanished. He turned to face her, silver eyes reflecting starlight. But somehow, knowing all that makes them less beautiful than simply seeing them with you beside me. Hinata's smile was visible even in darkness. Perhaps that's the wisdom the eyes can't provide directly, understanding the difference between knowledge and experience. You're remarkably good at teaching me things Omniscience can't, he observed, reaching to brush a strand of hair from her face. The gesture led naturally to closer contact, the culmination of unspoken feelings finally acknowledged. Their RST kiss carried significance beyond mere physical connection, a commitment to humanity over cosmic detachment, to personal truth over universal knowledge. When they separated, Naruto found his omniscience and perception had automatically focused entirely on the present moment, the first time since acquiring the eyes that all other information had faded completely from awareness. For those brief seconds, he had experienced reality directly rather than through omniscient filtration. That was, he began, searching for adequate description. Worth waiting for, Hinata completed softly. They settled into comfortable silence, the vast desert night enveloping them in shared solitude. Eventually, watch rotations were established, though Naruto's perception rendered traditional vigilance largely redundant. Still, maintaining normal protocols provided structure and discipline that countered the potentially overwhelming nature of omniscience. During his watch, Naruto found himself reflecting on the temple they sought and what revelations it might contain. The ancient map marked this location with a symbol representing perception, suggesting information about the fundamental nature of the eyes rather than merely their application. His contemplation was interrupted by a subtle shift in the tracker's position, movement indicating decision rather than continued observation. Through the eyes, he walked the figure pack equipment with efficient movements before setting out directly toward their camp. Hinata, he called softly, gently waking her from sleep. Our observer has decided to introduce themselves. She was immediately alert, activating her Byakugan to confirm his assessment. Single approach, moderate pace, no apparent aggressive posture. They prepared to receive their visitor, maintaining relaxed positioning that suggested openness to conversation while remaining ready for less friendly scenarios. As the figure crested a nearby dune, moonlight revealed a woman of middle years. Wearing the practical attire of desert dwellers, loose-fitting clothes in colors that blended with surroundings, face partially covered against sand. Travelers from Fire Country, she called in accented but fluent common language. You follow strange paths through dangerous lands. We have official business in Wind Country, Naruto replied, revealing nothing of their specific purpose. Our trave documentation is in order if you wish to examine it. The woman approached to conversational distance before stopping, studying them with the experienced eye of someone who had evaluated many travelers over years of desert patrol. I am Amaya, she introduced herself. Independent guide and occasionally, information broker. Your arrival by Giant Toad attracted attention in certain quarters. Hey, Opal wonder what brings Konoha shinobi so far from home, especially one with such unusual eyes. Naruto exchanged glances with Hinata, recognition dawning simultaneously. The name matched the assassin they had encountered during the Lightning Daimyo's visit, the woman whose poisoning attempt Naruto had thwarted through omniscient perception. We've met before, he said carefully, watching her reaction. In Konoha, under less friendly circumstances, Amaya's expression registered genuine confusion. I have never visited your village. You confuse me with someone else. The eyes confirmed her sins. Reti, this woman truly believed she had never encountered them before. Yet the resemblance to the assassin was unmistakable, down to distinctive scar pattern visible at her wrist. My mistake, Naruto conceded, filing this curiosity away for later examination. May I ask who sent you to observe us? No one sent me, she replied with slight indignation. I monitor desert approaches independently. Information has value to various interested parties. I merely determine whether travelers merit attention. And do we? Hinata asked diplomatically. Amaya considered them thoughtfully. That depends on your destination. Most follow established routes between settlements. You travel directly toward the empty quarter, a place of ruins and legends where few venture willingly. The designation matched their temple location perfectly, confirming they remained on correct course. Naruto decided calculated transparency might serve better than evasion. We're scholars researching ancient sites, he said, offering partial truth. The ruins hold historical significance we hope to document. Scholars with shinobi training and diplomatic credentials, Amaya noted skeptically. Interesting combination. The world is complex, Hinata responded smoothly. People often serve multiple purposes. This pragmatic assessment seemed to resonate with Amaya, who nodded slight acknowledgement. True enough. The empty quarter is treacherous. Atmospheric disturbances, unstable terrain, unusual phenomena that confuse navigation. Few who enter return with sanity intact. We're well prepared, Naruto assured her. Perhaps. Amaya studied him with renewed intensity, focusing particularly on his silver eyes. But some preparations create their own dangers. Those eyes you carry, they see much but understand little. The desert knows this paradox well. The statement carried echoes of Shizuka's warnings, suggesting knowledge beyond ordinary desert guidance. Naruto's omniscient perception attempted to mine the extent of Amaya's understanding but encountered curious resistance, another limitation when faced with individuals who possessed certain types of awareness. Do you know something about these eyes? He asked directly. Amaya smiled slightly. The desert remembers what civilizations forget. Ancient powers leave impressions in sand and stone that those who listen can hear. She gestured toward the horizon. The empty quarter holds temples older than shinobi nations, older than chakra as you understand it. Places where barriers between worlds grow thin. You've been there, Hinata surmised. Once, in my youth. I saw enough to know wisdom lies in respecting boundaries. Amaya reached into her robes, withdrawing a small object wrapped in protective cloth. But I recognize necessity when I see it. Take this, it helps navigate the quarter's disorienting effects. Naruto accepted the offering cautiously, unwrapping layers to reveal a compass-like device of unfamiliar design. Unlike standard navigation tools, this one contained multiple needles suspended in amber-colored liquid, surrounding a central chamber filled with what appeared to be constantly shifting sand. A pathfinder, Amaya explained. It responds to intention rather than direction, shows the way toward what you truly seek rather than mere cardinal points. The eyes provided no information about the device's origin or mechanism, another blind spot suggesting technologies outside conventional understanding. Yet something about its construction resonated with the cosmic energy Naruto had encountered in the ruins where he'd found the eyes. Thank you, he said sincerely. This is unexpectedly generous. Amaya shrugged slightly. Consider it investment in potential future exchange. Information flows both ways between those who recognize its value. She turned to leave, then paused. One final counsel. When you reach the temple, remember that seeing and knowing are not the same. The eyes reveal facts but not truth. With that cryptic advice, she departed into the desert night, form quickly disappearing among dunes that concealed as effectively as any forest. Naruto and Hinata examined the pathfinder carefully, testing its response to different intentions. The central chamber's sand shifted constantly, forming patterns that corresponded somehow to mental focus rather than physical orientation. Another piece of the puzzle, Hinata observed. And another person with knowledge about the eyes who appears exactly when needed. You noticed that too, Naruto said, troubled by the pattern. Shizuka, Rei, no. Amaya, each providing specific assistance at precisely the right moment. Almost as if our journey is being guided, she completed his thought. Following a predetermined path despite apparent freedom of choice. The implication disturbed them both, that even with omniscient perception, Naruto might be moving through scenarios arranged by forces beyond his awareness. The eyes showed possible futures branching from each decision point, but what if those decision points themselves were carefully orchestrated? We proceed as planned, he decided finally. But with heightened awareness of these patterns. If someone or something is directing our path, understanding the purpose becomes as important as reaching the temple itself. They resumed their journey at first light, using both Naruto's omniscient perception and the pathfinder to navigate toward the empty quarter. The landscape gradually transformed as they progressed, dunes giving way to more varied terrain including salt flats, rocky outcroppings, and occasional dead vegetation preserved by extreme aridity. By midday of their second day in the desert, signs of the region's strange properties became apparent. Mirages red with unusual persistence and detail, not merely illusory water but entire phantom landscapes that shimmered at horizons. More disconcerting were occasional spatial distortions where distances seemed to compress or expand unpredictably, challenging even omniscient perception's reliability. The pathfinders becoming essential, Naruto acknowledged as they navigated a particularly disorienting section where identical rock formations repeated in patterns that defied normal geometry. My perception keeps slipping somehow, showing contradictory information about directions and distances. Hinata nodded, her own Byakugan experiencing similar difficulties. It's as if space itself is folded here, creating overlapping layers that confuse dojutsu abilities. The Pathfinder proved invaluable in such conditions, its multiple needles occasionally spinning wildly before settling into configurations that somehow indicated correct routes through distorted terrain. By focusing clearly on their destination while consulting the device, they maintained progress despite increasingly bizarre surroundings. Late afternoon brought them to the edge of what appeared to be an enormous depression in the desert floor, a perfectly circular basin several kilometers across, its interior obscured by swirling patterns of sand suspended in air despite the absence of significant wind. The empty quarter, Naruto said with certainty, the eyes providing fragmented historical knowledge about the location. Ancient texts called it the nexus of knowing, a place where reality's fabric grows thin enough for cosmic awareness to penetrate mortal perception. And somewhere within that, Hinata added, lies our temple. The Pathfinder confirmed their assessment, all needles aligning to point directly into the basin's center, where the suspended sand formed its most complex patterns. Descending into the depression would mean entering an environment where normal physical laws appeared significantly altered, a prospect that would give even experienced shinobi pause. The Temple of Perception, Naruto murmured, silver eyes reflecting the swirling patterns below. Where the eyes first manifested in the mortal realm. According to the scrolls we recovered, Hinata studied the basin thoughtfully. If that's true, it may contain fundamental information about the eyes, nature and purpose, perhaps even how to control them more effectively. They established camp at the basin's edge, deciding to begin their descent with fresh energy after nightfall when temperatures would make the journey more tolerable. As He prepared equipment and reviewed their supplies, Naruto found his omniscient perception increasingly drawn to the swirling patterns below, complex formations that seemed to contain information beyond visual arrangement. There's something alive about those patterns, he said as they shared a simple meal. Not conscious exactly, but responsive, like they're reacting to observation itself. I've noticed that too, Hinata confirmed. When I focus my Byakugan on specific areas, the sand shifts in ways that seem deliberately responsive to attention. This reactive quality became more pronounced as darkness fell. The suspended sand now faintly luminescent, glowing with soft blue-white light that created ghostly illumination throughout the basin. The patterns had organized into more structured formations, some resembling writing systems so ancient the eyes provided only fragmentary translation. It's time, Naruto decided, securing their camp and unnecessary supplies beneath a simple protection jutsu. The Pathfinder shows the optimal entry point approximately half a kilometer east of our position. They approached the indicated location cautiously, finding what appeared to be an ancient stairway carved directly into the basin wall, stone steps descending in perfect spirals that contradicted the apparently natural formation of the depression itself. The craftsmanship suggested civilization far predating current nations, perhaps even the era of the Sage of Six Paths. The descent proved less physically challenging than anticipated but increasingly disorienting. Each complete spur of the staircase seemed to cross dimensional boundaries rather than merely vertical distance, subtle shifts in air pressure, light quality, and even gravity suggesting passage through overlapping reality layers rather than simple geographical space. We're not just going down, Hinata observed halfway through their descent. We're going elsewhere. Naruto nodded agreement, the eyes confirming her assessment. Their movement followed paths that existed in multiple dimensional spaces simultaneously, a concept so fundamentally strange that even omniscient perception struggled to interpret it coherently. When they finally reached the basin floor, the environment defied conventional description. Suspended sand formed elaborate three-dimensional structures that continuously reconfigured themselves, creating temporary architecture that dissolved and reformed in endless variation. Beneath their feet, the ground felt solid yet somehow permeable, as though they walked on the surface of liquid that had agreed to support their weight through mutual consent. Most striking was the quality of awareness permeating the space. a sensation of being observed by the environment itself, each movement noted and assessed by intelligence that existed without discrete form or location. The eyes revealed this as ambient consciousness, perception without perceiver, knowing without knower. The temple should be near the center, Naruto said, voice sounding strangely modulated in the unusual acoustic properties of their surroundings. The Pathfinder confirmed his statement, all needles aligned toward the basin's heart where the suspended sand formed its most complex configurations. As they moved in that direction, temporary pathways materialized before them, bridges of compressed particles that provided stable footing through shifting terrain. It's responding to our intention, Hinata realized. Creating the way because we seek it. After approximately 20 minutes of increasingly strange navigation, they reached what appeared to be their destination, a structure unlike any temple they had previously encountered. Rather than solid architecture, this edifice existed as a perfect spherical void. Within the swirling sand patterns, a place where nothing existed except pure, empty potential. How do we enter something that isn't there? Hinata wondered aloud. The question answered itself as the void expanded slightly, creating an opening that represented invitation rather than entrance in conventional terms. Naruto consulted the Pathfinder once more, confirming this was indeed their intent. Destination despite its counterintuitive manifestation. Together, he said, taking Hinata's hand. Whatever happens, we experience it as one. They stepped into emptiness, expecting disorientation but instead finding perfect clarity. Inside the void, perception functioned differently, not through physical senses but direct awareness that bypassed conventional information processing. Knowledge arrived as complete understanding rather than sequential learning, immediate and totalizing. At the void's center floated a single object, a crystalline sphere identical in composition to the one that had originally granted Naruto the eyes of omniscience. Unlike that first encounter, however, this sphere contained no power waiting to be released. Instead, it served as repository for information about the power already bestowed. Without physical contact, the sphere began communicating directly to Naruto's consciousness, conveying concepts that transcended language yet translated into understanding he could comprehend. Beside him, Hinata experienced a parallel transmission adjusted to her non-omniscient perception, different in content but complementary in purpose. The eyes see all possibilities simultaneously. Came the first revelation, yet the bearer exists in only one. This is the fundamental paradox of omniscience in mortal vessels, knowing what cannot be directly experienced. Images ACC, accompanied the concept. Countless timelines branching from each moment, infinite variations created by choice and chance, the overwhelming totality that the eyes perceived constantly. Naruto understood suddenly why filtering had proven so challenging. He had been attempting to organize information sequentially that existed simultaneously. Perception determines reality, continued the transmission. The act of observation collapses possibility into actuality. The eyes do not merely see what is but participate in determining what becomes. This revelation struck with particular force. His omniscient perception wasn't passive observation but active participation in reality's formation. By choosing which possibilities to focus upon, he influenced which became manifest, a responsibility far beyond merely applying foreknowledge tactically. The mirror reflects not merely what is seen but what could be, the sphere continued, providing context for Kagami's mysterious abilities. Where the eyes collapse possibility through observation, the mirror restores possibility through reflection, maintaining balance between determinism and potential. More profound insights followed, the cosmic origins of both artifacts, their purpose in maintaining equilibrium between knowing and becoming, the consequences when such powers entered mortal hands unprepared for their implications. Throughout this knowledge transfer, Naruto became increasingly aware of the eyes' true nature not as tools for personal power but components in a cosmic system of checks and balances. Most significantly, he learned the purpose of the arbiter, not merely punisher of those who acquired inappropriate knowledge but maintainer of boundaries between mortal and divine understanding. The arbiter appeared when those boundaries threatened to dissolve completely. When omniscience began transforming human consciousness into something that could no longer exist within normal reality constraints. Previous bearers faced judgment not for using the eyes but for becoming them. The sphere revealed When identity dissolves into pure knowing, when the individual ceases to choose which possibilities to manifest, the arbiter restores separation between observer and observed. This explained why some bearers had been destroyed while others like Ray had survived. The crucial factor wasn't power usage but maintenance of distinct identity despite omniscient perception. Those who surrendered their humanity to become pure awareness invited cosmic correction. Those who retained their essential nature as choosing, limited beings could potentially coexist with unlimited knowledge. As the transmission concluded, the crystalline sphere pulsed once with brilliant light before dissolving into particles that merged with the surrounding void. The temple itself began reconfiguring, the emptiness filling with manifestations of concepts they had just received, visual representations of cosmic principles too abstract for ordinary comprehension. When equilibrium returned, Naruto and Hinata found themselves standing in what appeared to be a conventional chamber with stone walls inscribed with familiar spiral patterns. The transition from void to solid architecture had occurred without perceptible movement on their part, reality rearranging itself around them rather than them traveling through space. "Did you see it all?" Naruto asked quietly, still processing the immense download of information. Hinata nodded, her expression reflecting the profound impact of what they'd experienced. "Not the same way you did, but yes. The eyes aren't just about knowing everything, they're about choosing what to manifest from infinite possibilities. And the danger isn't using them but losing myself to them," he continued, understanding crystallizing into clarity. "Becoming pure observation without human connection or choice. Which explains why previous bearers who maintained their humanity survived," Hinata concluded. "It's not about power but identity." They explored the chamber carefully, discovering additional inscriptions that reinforced and expanded the sphere's revelations. Most significant was a wall depicting previous bearers' Thrugo Ut history, dozens of figures from diverse civilizations and eras, each shown with silver eyes identical to Naruto's. Some images showed figures surrounded by destruction, others in peaceful communion with cosmic forces. The distinction clearly indicating different outcomes of their encounters with the Arbiter. "So many," Naruto murmured, tracing the images with wondering fingers. "I thought I was unique. But this has happened repeatedly throughout history. And will likely continue after you," Hinata observed, indicating blank spaces on the wall where future bearers would eventually be recorded. "The cycle seems ongoing rather than finite." This perspective brought both comfort and concern. His experience was part of pattern rather than unprecedented anomaly, yet the pattern itself suggests inevitability rather than personal agency. If the eyes moved through history according to cosmic design, how much choice did he truly have in their use or eventual disposition? As they completed their examination of the chamber, a new doorway materialized in the previously solid wall, an exit that hadn't existed before but now presented itself as obvious continuation of their journey. Beyond lay a narrow corridor leading upward toward what appeared to be surface level, bypassing the elaborate dimensional transitions of their descent. "Convenient," Hinata remarked with slight suspicion. "Almo. Saint, as if the temple is finished with us and showing us out." "Or showing us forward," Naruto suggested. "Remember what Amaya said about the eyes seeing facts but not truth. I think we've learned the facts, now we need to discover how to apply them truthfully." They ascended the corridor, emerging not at the basin's edge where they had established camp but at an entirely different location, an oasis. Approximately 10 kilometers from the empty quarter, complete with palm trees surrounding a small but vibrant pool of fresh water. Their supplies had been transported as well, packs resting neatly bent, each shade as though they had arranged them personally. "Dimensional manipulation beyond anything I've seen before," Naruto said, examining their surroundings with both normal and omniscient perception. "Not mere teleportation but reality reconfiguration." Hinata activated her Byakugan, confirming they had indeed been relocated rather than merely experiencing illusion. "The temple clearly operates on principles beyond conventional ninjutsu. More evidence of the cosmic scale we're dealing with." They established proper camp beside the oasis, grateful for the comfortable environment after the empty quarters' disorienting properties. As night fell, they reviewed what they had learned, attempting to organize profound revelations into practical understanding. If perception determines reality, Naruto reasoned, experimenting with his omniscient abilities in light of new knowledge, then focusing the eyes on specific possibilities should help manifest those outcomes rather than others. He demonstrated by concentrating on a small dead branch nearby, perceiving not merely its current state but potential futures where it might fall in different directions if disturbed. By focusing exclusively on one possibility, the branch falling eastward, he created subtle probability shift that manifested when Hinata gently touched it with her foot. Despite equal physical probability of multiple directions, the branch fell precisely as he had focused upon. That's significant, Hinata observed, understanding the implications immediately. You're not just seeing possibilities but influencing which ones manifest. Within limits, Naruto cautioned. Major events with many variables would require much more focused intent, and some possibilities seem inherently more probable than others regardless of perception. They continued exploring practical applications of their new understanding late into the night. Most significant was Naruto's discovery that organizing omniscient information by Poe's ability clusters rather than sequential facts improved both comprehension and utility, seeing patterns of potential rather than isolated data points. By morning, Naruto had developed substantially improved control over his perception, filtering information according to probability relevance rather than attempting to process everything simultaneously. The silver light in his eyes pulsed with new steadiness, suggesting harmony between power and bearer that had previously been lacking. We should report our findings to Konoha, Hinata suggested as they prepared to depart the oasis. This changes fundamental understanding of the eyes, nature and potential applications. Naruto nodded agreement, already composing mental summary of their discoveries. Yet something troubled him still, the recurring pattern of guided experiences that suggested larger design behind their apparently independent investigation. Before we return, he said thoughtfully, I want to understand something about Amaya. The resemblance to the assassin we encountered in Konoha is too perfect for coincidence, yet she genuinely didn't recognize us. Hinata considered this puzzle. Could they be twins, or perhaps some form of replication jutsu? The eyes show something stranger, Naruto replied, frowning slightly as he accessed omniscient information. It's as if they're the same person existing in different states. Simultaneously, parallel versions occupying the same reality through some form of dimensional overlap. Like the branching possibilities the temple showed us, Hinata suggested. Different versions of the same individual manifesting in our timeline. The concept aligned with what they'd learned about perception collapsing possibility into actuality. If the boundaries between potential timelines weakening, perhaps due to the eyes' presence in mortal hands, individuals might exist in multiple states simultaneously, unaware of their alternate selves. We should investigate this before returning to Konoha, Naruto decided. Amaya mentioned being an information broker with connections throughout Wind Country. Finding her again might provide insight into these anomalies. Using the Pathfinder and omniscient perception in tandem, they tracked subtle indicators of Amaya's passage across the desert, footprints preserved in specific sand compositions, lingering chakra traces invisible to conventional detection. Probability patterns suggesting likely routes for someone with her knowledge of terrain. Their search led them to a small trading settlement 2 days' journey from the oasis, a cluster of permanent structures surrounded by temporary dwellings that expanded or contracted with seasonal commerce patterns. According to local information, Amaya maintained a semi-permanent residence here, operating as information coordinator for various interests throughout the region. They located her dwelling on the settlement's eastern edge, a modest structure distinguished by subtle security measures visible only to enhanced perception. Rather than approaching directly, Naruto observed from distance first, the eyes revealing Amaya inside engaged in what appeared to be communication ritual involving desert sand arranged in precise patterns. She's using some form of long-distance information transfer, he reported to Hinata as they watched from concealed position. Similar to our electron, IC communications but operating through different principles entirely. More interesting was what the eyes revealed about Amaya herself, flickering state shifts occurring at quantum level, her existence oscillating between multiple potential versions at millisecond intervals. Though appearing solid and singular to conventional perception, to omniscient sight she manifested as probability cloud rather than fixed entity. When they finally approached directly, Amaya showed no surprise at their arrival, either anticipating their visit through her own means or perhaps experiencing it already through alternate timeline bleed through. The temple provided what you sought, she stated rather than asked as she welcomed them into her dwelling. Understanding arrives, though wisdom may still lag behind. You knew what we would find, Naruto replied, accepting the desert tea she offered with practiced hospitality. I knew what the temple contains, she corrected. What seekers find depends on their capacity to perceive. The interior of her dwelling revealed her true occupation more clearly than external appearance, walls lined with communication devices of both conventional and esoteric design. Storage systems containing information recorded in multiple formats, and most tellingly, a three-dimensional map of reality distortions throughout the region with the empty quarter at its center. You monitor dimensional boundaries, Hinata observed, studying the map with her Byakugan. Track where they're thinning or fluctuating. Amaya inclined her head in acknowledgement. Someone must maintain awareness of such things. Boundaries exist for reasons beyond human understanding. Like the one between you and your other self, Naruto said directly. The version of you who attempted assassination in Konoha weeks ago. Rather than surprise or denial, Amaya's expression showed resigned recognition. So you've perceived it already. The splitting of potentials, the bleeding between what was once separate. Explain, Hinata requested quietly. Amaya sighed, settling cross-legged before her communications array. The eyes, returned to mortal hands has consequences beyond individual power. Each bearer throughout history has created ripples in reality's fabric, weakening boundaries between what is and what might be. Your awakening accelerated a process already underway. She gestured toward the dimensional map, where pulsing points indicated increasing instability throughout the shinobi world. Potential timelines once firmly separate now bleed into one another. Individuals exist in multiple states simultaneously, most unaware of their alternate selves. Including you, Naruto confirmed. I am more aware than most, Amaya acknowledged. My profession attunes me to information patterns, including those from adjacent possibilities. The version you encountered in Konoha exists in a timeline where different choices led to different outcomes, yet as boundaries thin, her actions and mine increasingly overlap. This explained the apparent contradiction of identical individuals with different memories and motives, not clones or twins but alternate versions of the same person Experian. Qing reality bleed through as dimensional boundaries weakened. Is this happening everywhere? Hinata asked, concern evident in her voice. Unevenly, Amaya replied, indicating variation patterns on her map, concentrated around nexus points, places where cosmic energies naturally concentrate. The eyes accelerate the process but didn't initiate it. And the arbiter? Naruto questioned. Does it respond to these boundary violations as well? Amaya's expression grew grave. The arbiter maintains separation between mortal and divine understanding, but also between reality states that should remain distinct. Its appearance becomes increasingly likely as these violations compound. The implications were profoundly disturbing. Naruto's mere possession of the eyes, regardless of how carefully he used them, contributed to weakening reality boundaries. Each manifestation of omniscient perception created further thinning between potential timelines, accelerating a process that might eventually trigger cosmic intervention. Can it be reversed? He asked, the question emerging from deepest concern. Uncertain, Amaya admitted. No previous bearer has recognized the pattern quickly enough to attempt correction. Most become so entranced with omniscient power that they accelerate boundary dissolution until intervention becomes inevitable. She studied him with newfound interest. You perceive differently. The connection to humanity remains strong despite cosmic awareness. Perhaps. Her thought remained unfinished as Naruto's omniscient perception suddenly flared with urgent warning, multi-PLE presences converging on their location with clear hostile intent. Not void collective this time but something potentially more dangerous. Reality distortions moving with purpose, manipulating dimensional boundaries to approach undetected by conventional means. We have company, he announced, rising smoothly to defensive position. Not physical attackers, something operating through reality folds. Amaya moved with surprising speed to her communication array, activating protective measures that extended beyond normal defensive jutsu. Phase hunters, she explained tersely. Entities that express Lloyd boundary thinning to move between realities. Normally confined to their own dimensional plane, but increasing instability allows incursion. Hostile, Hinata asked, already activating her Byakugan. Intensely. They perceive the eyes as both threat and prize, power that could either destroy or enhance their ability to traverse dimensional boundaries. The attack came not through conventional vectors but reality itself. Space around them distorting as though viewed through heat haze, solid objects briefly phasing into incorpo reality before resolidifying in slightly altered configurations. Rough these distortions emerged the hunters, entities that defied simple description, their forms shifting between states that human perception struggled to interpret coherently. Naruto's omniscient GHT revealed their true nature, beings composed of probability rather than matter, existing simultaneously in multiple potential states, capable of manipulating reality locally by shifting which possibilities manifested moment to moment. Neither fully physical nor entirely energy-based, they represented a category beyond conventional classification systems. They can't maintain presence in our reality indefinitely, Amaya called, activating a device that created visible boundary reinforcement around the dwelling's perimeter. But while here, they can alter local physics to their advantage. T.S. became immediately apparent as gravity shifted unpredictably around them, increasing or decreasing without warning, changing vectors to pull sideways or upward rather than downward. Solid surfaces became temporarily permeable, allowing partial phasing that threatened to trap limbs within suddenly resolidified matter. Conventional combat techniques proved largely ineffective against such unconventional adversaries. Physical attacks passed through probability fields without impact. Energy-based jutsu dispersed across multiple potential states rather than concentrating on single targets. Naruto adapted quickly, applying his new understanding of perception's role in manifesting reality. Rather than attacking the entities directly, he focused omniscient sight on perceiving them in single coherent state, forcing probability collapse through concentrated observation. The silver light in his eyes intensified as he essentially rewrote local reality parameters through directed perception. They exist in all possible states until observed. He called to Hinata, focus your Byakugan on seeing them as solid, singular entities. She understood immediately, her unique visual prowess complementing his omniscience perfectly. Where his perception collapsed probability into actuality, her Byakugan pinpointed precise chakra vulnerabilities within the temporarily coherent forms. Working in seamless coordination, they forced the phase hunters into increasingly stable manifestations, creating openings for Amaya's specialized countermeasures, devices that apparently strengthened natural dimensional boundaries, preventing the entities from shifting between states as freely. The battle transformed the dwelling's interior into reality patchwork, areas where physics operated normally adjacent to zones of dimensional instability. Furniture partially phased into floors, walls temporarily transparent revealing other potential versions of the same space, air itself becoming visible as probability patterns rather than uniform medium. Through disciplined application of their new understanding, they gradually gained advantage, forcing the phase hunters into increasingly defensive postures as their ability to manipulate local reality diminished. Naruto's omniscient perception revealed their growing desperation, attempts to retreat to their native dimensional plane blocked by Amaya's boundary reinforcement technology. The conflict reached crisis point when the largest entity attempted desperate measure, creating localized reality implosion that would potentially destroy everything within 50-meter radius, collapsing all possible states into singular point of infinite density. Naruto perceived this intention moments before implementation, the eyes showing catastrophic outcome with perfect clarity. Without conscious thought, he expanded omniscient perception to encompass the entire threat radius, focusing not merely on observing but actively selecting which possibility would manifest. After than the entity's intended implosion, he perceived and therefore manifested an alternate outcome, reality stabilization that forced all local space-time into normal parameters, eliminating the multiple potential states the hunters required for existence in this dimension. The effect was immediate and dramatic. Deprived of probability manipulation ability, the phase hunters lost coherence rapidly. Their forms dissolving into disorganized energy that dissipated across dimensional boundaries. Within seconds, all trace of their presence had vanished, reality snapping back to conventional parameters with almost audible finality. Naruto staggered slightly from the exertion, the most intensive application of directed perception he had yet attempted. Hinata steadied him with practiced ease, concern evident in her expression. "What did you just do?" Amaya asked, staring at him with newfound wariness. That level of reality manipulation shouldn't be possible for a bearer so recently awakened. "I just chose which possibility became real," Naruto explained, still processing what had occurred. "Focused on the outcome where reality stabilized rather than imploded. You didn't just observe possibility, you created it," she corrected, voice tight with what might have been fear. "Rewrote local reality parameters completely rather than selecting from existing potentials." This distinction struck him forcefully. The temple had shown perception collapsing possibility into actuality, choosing which potential manifested from existing options. What he had just done transcended selection to become creation, generating outcome that existed in neither entity's intention nor natural probability space. "Is that bad?" Hinata asked tentatively, noting Amaya's reaction. "It's unprecedented," the information broker replied, moving to examine her instruments which registered massive fluctuation in dimensional boundary integrity. Previous bearers observed and selected. Creation was reserved. D for cosmic forces beyond mortal capability. She turned to face Naruto directly, expression grave. "If you can create reality rather than merely perceive it, the arbiter's appearance becomes not merely likely but certain. Such power fundamentally violates separation between mortal and divine operation." The warning landed heavily, implications cascading through Naruto's understanding. The eyes had evolved beyond their intended function, or perhaps he had evolved beyond intended usage. Either way, cosmic balance had been disturbed more profoundly than mere possession of omniscient perception. "How much time do we have?" he asked quietly. Amaya consulted her instruments, calculations flowing across specialized displays. "Difficult to determine precisely. Boundary integrity continues degrading at accelerated rate. Interface between potential timelines increases exponentially with each major reality manipulation." She gestured toward her dimensional map, where distortion patterns had intensified dramatically following their conflict. Previous patterns suggest arbiter manifestation occurs when boundary degradation reaches critical threshold, perhaps weeks rather than months at current progression. "Then we need to visit the remaining temples quickly," Naruto decided. "Gather whatever knowledge might help us address this situation before confrontation becomes inevitable." Hinata nodded agreement, already gathering their equipment with practiced efficiency. "The Water Country Temple is next closest according to our map." Amaya watched their preparations with thoughtful expression. "Your path differs from previous bearers," she observed. "They sought to expand power. You seek to understand responsibility. Perhaps that distinction matters more than capability itself." "Let's hope the Arbiter agrees with that assessment," Naruto replied, securing his pack. "Otherwise, understanding may come too late to matter." As they prepared to depart, Amaya offered one final insight, information that would prove crucial in their continuing journey. "The temples are connected through dimensional resonance rather than mere geographical placement. Having visited two, you may find direct passage to others without physical travel between." She approached a blank wall of her dwelling, pressing specific points in sequence that revealed hidden compartment containing device similar to the IR Pathfinder but more elaborate in construction. "This resonance key attunes to temple energies you've already experienced. Focus intention on next destination while activating the central chamber." Naruto accepted the device carefully, the eyes revealing complex dimensional mechanics beyond conventional understanding. Like the Pathfinder, this technology operated through principles that transcend normal physical limitations, suggesting origin beyond mortal creation. "Why help us?" Hinata asked directly. "What's your stake in this cosmic drama?" Amaya's expression revealed complex emotion, resignation mixed with determination. "Reality stability matters to those who monitor information flow. Too much boundary dissolution threatens all existence, not merely individual timelines." She paused, then added more personally. "And perhaps I wish to discover whether this cycle can finally be broken, whether a bearer might find path beyond the binary choice of surrender or destruction." With final instructions for the resonance key's operation, they departed Amaya's dwelling, seeking appropriate location to attempt dimensional transition. The settlement's outskirts provided suitable privacy. Abandoned structure offering concealment from curious observers. "Ready," Naruto asked as they prepared the device according to Amaya's instructions. Hinata nodded, taking his hand with characteristic steadiness. Together, whatever happens, he activated the resonance key, focusing intention precisely on the water country temple marked on their ancient map. The device responded immediately, Centra. L chamber glowing with increasing intensity as dimensional harmonics aligned between locations separated by conventional geography but connected through cosmic architecture. Reality shifted around the M, not the disorienting distortion created by phase hunters but smooth transition between spaces designed for such connection. Their surroundings dissolved into patterned energy before reconstituting INTO entirely different environment. Cool mist replacing desert heat, the sound of flowing water replacing wind-blown sand. They had arrived at the base of massive waterfall cascading down sheer cliff face. Its waters flowing into circular pool surrounded by ancient stone monuments. Mist created rainbow prisms in morning sunlight, while carved channels directed water through elaborate pathways that formed familiar spiral patterns across expansive ceremonial plaza. The Temple of Application, Naruto identified from their map descriptions, where bearers learn to use omniscience constructively rather than merely possessing it. Their journey continued, each temple providing crucial pieces in the cosmic puzzle they sought to solve. Yet time grew increasingly precious as reality boundaries in further, the Arbiter's manifestation approaching with each expanded use of the eyes. The question remained whether understanding would come quickly enough to change the outcome that had befallen previous bearers throughout history. Naruto's unique approach offered possibility beyond the binary choice of surrender or destruction, but possibility required manifestation through perception focused by wisdom rather than mere knowledge. Chapter 3 End.